Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. The new house was everything they wanted: spacious, secluded, perfect for a fresh start. But as they unloaded boxes, she noticed a camera hidden in the wall. Confused, they searched the entire place. Every room had a camera, all wired to a single, locked basement door. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the driveway as Detective Sarah Lang pulled up to 1478 Oakwood Lane. The property stood silent now, yellow police tape fluttering gently in the autumn breeze. 3 weeks had passed since the Millers had fled their dream home in the middle of the night, leaving behind half-unpacked boxes and unanswered questions. Detective Lang's shoes crunched softly on the gravel as she approached the house, the sound mingling with the distant call of birds in the surrounding woods. Inside, the air hung still and stale. Lang moved through the rooms with practiced patience, her flashlight illuminating dust particles suspended in shafts of light that broke through the partially drawn blinds. The realtor's description had called it a perfect family retreat nestled in privacy, and on paper it was exactly that: 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an open concept kitchen overlooking 2 acres of wooded land. The price had been surprisingly reasonable for such a property, which explained why the Millers had jumped at the opportunity. The detective's fingers brushed against the small indentation in the living room wall where the first camera had been discovered. Emily Miller had found it while hanging a family photo, a tiny black lens barely visible behind a cleverly designed false outlet cover. The discovery might have been dismissed as an odd security feature left by the previous owner, except that within hours, the Millers had found 11 more cameras in light fixtures, smoke detectors, air vents, even inside the frame of the bathroom mirror. Lang carefully documented each location in her notebook, the soft scratch of her pen against paper echoing in the empty house. The cameras themselves were gone now, collected as evidence, leaving only the hollow spaces where they had once watched. The basement door remained locked as it had been when the Millers first tried to open it. The property listing had mentioned a basement, but the realtor had explained that the previous owner had taken the key with them, promising that a replacement would be sent. It never was. When officers finally broke down the door after the Millers' frantic call to police, they found a room unlike any other in the house, walls lined with monitors, hard drives humming softly, capturing and storing every moment of life within these walls. Detective Lang sat at the kitchen counter, spreading out the case files. The house had been on the market for just 3 weeks before the Millers purchased it. Before that, it had sat empty for nearly 6 months following the death of its owner, Harold Winters, an elderly man who had lived alone for decades after his wife passed away. Neighbors described him as quiet, private, but pleasant when engaged. No one had ever been invited inside. Lang thumbed through Winters' records: no criminal history, no complaints filed against him. Nothing that would suggest the elaborate surveillance system hidden within his home. His death certificate listed natural causes. The detective wondered if the cameras had been his creation at all, or if someone else had installed them during the months the house sat empty, waiting for new occupants. The property records revealed another layer to the mystery. Before Winters, the house had belonged to the Schieffer family, who had sold it abruptly in 1997 after just 8 months of residence. Before them, the Colemans had stayed 3 years, and the Patels before them had lasted just under a year. Each family had moved in with hopeful plans, yet each had departed with unexplained haste, often selling below market value. As dusk settled over the property, Lang moved to the master bedroom where Emily and David Miller had slept for only 2 nights before making their discovery. The closet, with its camera hidden in the ceiling light fixture, would have captured their most private moments. The detective felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. The investigation had yielded fingerprints on the camera equipment, but they matched neither the Millers nor Harold Winters. They remained unidentified in the system, as mysterious as the purpose behind the surveillance. There were no remote connections, no evidence that the footage was being streamed elsewhere. It appeared to be a closed system, recording and storing, waiting for someone to come and watch. Most disturbing to Lang was what the forensic team had found on the hard drives, not just footage from the few days the Millers had lived there, but years of recordings, dating back well before Harold Winter's death. The elderly man moving through his daily routines, eating alone at his kitchen table, sleeping in his bed, all captured by the same hidden eyes. If he had installed the cameras himself, why would he record his own solitary existence? And if not, who had been watching him too? The basement monitoring station told another story as well. Some of the equipment was relatively new, while other pieces were older, suggesting the system had been upgraded over time. The Millers' movements had been the most recent recordings, but they weren't the first to be watched without their knowledge. Lang's phone vibrated softly in her pocket. The lab had completed their analysis of the hard drives. Most of the footage showed exactly what one would expect people living their lives, unaware they were being observed. But there was something else, something that made Lang's skin prickle. On certain nights, when the house was still and its occupants asleep, the cameras had captured movement in the hall's shadows passing through rooms where no one should have been. As darkness fell completely outside, Lang gathered her notes and prepared to leave. The house seemed to watch her go, windows like empty eyes following her retreat. The case remained active, the cameras silent witnesses to a mystery still unfolding. The Millers had refused to return, choosing to forfeit their deposit rather than spend another night beneath those hidden lenses. In the weeks that followed, Detective Lang would trace the history of 1478 Oakwood Lane back further than any database could record. Local historical societies revealed that before it was a modern family home, the land had housed a smaller structure, a caretaker's cottage for a larger estate, long since divided and developed. That cottage had burned down in 1963, taking with it the caretaker who, neighbors from that era recalled, had been known for keeping meticulous records of everyone who came and went from the property. The new house would soon be listed again, its price reduced once more, its history of cameras and concerned exit sanitized from the description. Perhaps the next family would never notice the small imperfections in the walls where cameras had once been, or wonder why the basement door had been recently replaced. Perhaps they would sleep soundly, unaware of the house's habit of watching its inhabitants. Or perhaps, like those before them, they would feel the weight of unseen eyes and in time, join the growing list of families who had sought a fresh start at 1478 Oakwood Lane, only to discover that in this particular house, you were never truly alone, even when all the rooms were empty. The case of the watching house remains officially open in Detective Lang's files, one of those rare mysteries where answering one question only reveals 3 more. The cameras are gone, but their purpose and whoever installed them remains in the shadows, perhaps waiting for the next moving van to arrive at the curb. Story 2. The photograph album lay open on Emily Harmon's lap, its pages yellowed at the edges, corners softly curled from decades of gentle handling. Outside her apartment window, autumn rain tapped against the glass in a soothing, irregular rhythm. Steam rose from her forgotten cup of tea on the side table, curling into the warm lamplight that cast the room in amber hues. This was Emily's Friday night ritual, revisiting memories from a childhood that seemed both near and impossibly distant. Her fingers traced the outline of her 7-year-old self, standing proudly beside a sandcastle on Myrtle Beach. The grains of sand almost felt tangible beneath her fingertips, the memory of salt air so vivid she could almost taste it. But tonight something caught her eye that she'd never noticed before. In the background, partially obscured by a beach umbrella, stood a man, tall, lean, with dark hair. His face was turned toward her younger self, a faint smile visible even from that distance. Emily frowned, turning the page. Her 8th birthday party in their backyard in Charleston. Streamers hung from the oak tree, and chocolate cake smeared her delighted face. And there, leaning against the fence, the same man, watching. A chill that had nothing to do with the autumn evening crept up Emily's spine. She turned another page, Christmas morning, aged 9. The man stood in the hallway outside the living room, barely visible in the doorframe, but unmistakably the same figure. Another page, her elementary school graduation. The man stood at the far edge of the crowd of parents. Another page, a family picnic. The man sat at a distant table, facing their direction. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she continued. In every photograph at the zoo, at her high school volleyball game, at her parents' 25th anniversary party, he was there, always at the edges, always watching, always with that same faint smile. The album slipped from her lap as she reached for her phone. The call connected after 3 rings. "Mom," her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "I need to ask you something about our old family photos." "It's nearly midnight, honey. Is everything okay?" Her mother's voice was thick with interrupted sleep. "I'm looking through the album you gave me last Christmas. There's a man in the background of almost every picture. Tall, dark-haired. Who is he?" The silence that followed stretched so long that Emily checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then she heard her mother's sharp intake of breath. "He's not supposed to be there." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Emily waited, listening to her mother's suddenly rapid breathing. "Mom, what do you mean?" "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Don't call anyone else. Don't look at any more pictures." The call ended, leaving Emily alone with the scattered photographs and a question that seemed to pulse in the quiet apartment. Detective Marcus Reeves ran his finger along the edge of the photograph, studying it under the desk lamp in his small office at the Charleston Police Department. Outside his window, morning light struggled to penetrate the heavy cloud cover, casting the room in a perpetual twilight that suited his mood. Coffee cooled in a mug emblazoned with his daughter's artwork, a Father's Day gift from 3 years ago. "And you're certain you never noticed him before?" he asked, looking up at Emily Harmon and her mother Catherine, seated across from him. "I've had these albums my whole life," Emily said. "I've looked through them hundreds of times. He was never there before." "That's impossible," Reeves said gently. "Photographs don't change." Catherine Harmon's hands twisted in her lap. "I didn't think they could either, but he wasn't in those pictures when I put them in that album." Reeves leaned back in his chair, which protested with a low creak. 22 years on the force had taught him to recognize the difference between delusion and genuine fear. The Harmon women were frightened, not delusional. "Let me see all of them." They spread the photographs across his desk. Birthdays, holidays, school events, family gatherings spanning almost 15 years, and in each one the same man lingered at the edges of the frame, never front and center, always watching. "Do you recognize him, Mrs. Harmon?" Catherine shook her head slowly, but Reeves caught the hesitation. A detective learns to read the smallest signals, a flicker of the eyes, a tensing of the shoulders. "You're not sure," he observed. She met his gaze. "He looks familiar, but I can't place him." Reeves gathered the photographs carefully. "I'd like to keep these for a few days. We'll digitize them, maybe run facial recognition." As they stood to leave, Emily asked, "Do you think we're in danger?" Reeves considered his answer carefully. "I think these photographs tell a story, and until we know what that story is, it's best to be cautious. Keep your doors locked, stay with friends if possible. I'll call you as soon as I know anything." After they left, Reeves spread the photographs out again. The man's face was never in perfect focus, always slightly turned, partially obscured, or too distant. But it was the same man, no question. And something about him nagged at Reeves' memory, like a case file he'd reviewed long ago but couldn't quite recall. 3 days later, Emily's phone rang just after midnight. She'd been staying at her mother's house, neither of them wanting to be alone after their visit to Detective Reeves. "Ms. Harmon, it's Detective Reeves. I apologize for the late hour, but I've found something you need to see." An hour later, they sat in the same office, but the atmosphere had changed. Reeves looked tired, his eyes underscored by dark circles, his normally neat appearance slightly rumpled. The facial recognition software couldn't get a clear enough image for an identification, he began, sliding a folder across the desk. "But I remembered a cold case from when I was just starting out, 1998, a series of stalking complaints that never led to an arrest." Emily opened the folder. Inside was a grainy surveillance photo of a man entering an apartment building, the same man from her family photographs. "His name was Robert Ellison," Reeves continued. "He was a photographer who worked for various local newspapers and event companies in the late 90s. He was suspected of stalking at least 3 families, but there was never enough evidence to charge him. He would photograph families at public events, then doctor the images to insert himself into family gatherings." "But these weren't public events," Catherine protested. "These were private moments in our home." Reeves nodded grimly. "That's what concerns me. Ellison died in 2005, car accident on Highway 17. The silence in the room thickened, broken only by the soft hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. "Then how?" Emily began, but couldn't finish the thought. "I don't know," Reeves admitted, "but there's more. I had the lab analyze the photographs themselves, paper type, ink composition, development technique. These photos were all produced between 1995 and 2005. They're original prints, not doctored copies." Catherine's hands trembled as she picked up one of the photographs, Emily's 10th birthday. "But I took this picture myself. I would have seen him." "Memory is tricky," Reeves said gently, "especially when confronted with something that doesn't fit our understanding of events." "You think I'm imagining this?" Catherine's voice rose slightly. "No," Reeves said quickly. "I think these photographs are genuine, and I think somehow Robert Ellison was there. What I don't understand is why none of you noticed him at the time or in all the years since." Emily studied the photograph of her birthday party, the stranger's face partially visible behind a cluster of balloons. It's like he wanted to be seen eventually, like he was waiting for the right moment. The thought hung in the air, uncomfortable and ominous. "I'd like to have these analyzed by a specialist," Reeves said finally. "Someone who might be able to explain what we're seeing." As they prepared to leave, Emily turned back to the detective. "Do you believe in ghosts, Detective Reeves?" He considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I believe there are things we don't understand, things that don't fit neatly into case files and evidence logs." The following week, Emily sat alone in her apartment, staring at the photograph album in her lap. After consulting with various experts, including a photographic analyst, a psychologist, and even a reluctant parapsychologist, Detective Reeves had returned the photographs with no definitive explanation. The analyst confirmed they were original, unaltered prints. The psychologist suggested a shared delusion or false memory. The parapsychologist offered theories about imprints in time and space that Reeves had dismissed as nonsense. Emily had spent hours researching Robert Ellison, born in 1965, worked as a freelance photographer, no family, few friends, died alone on a rainy night when his car veered off the road. No obvious connection to the Harmon family beyond his presence in their photographs. She turned to the last page of the album, where she'd placed a photograph she'd found in a box in her mother's attic her parents' wedding day, long before Emily was born. She hadn't shown this one to Reeves. In it, her parents stood beaming outside the church, confetti falling around them like snow. And there, among the wedding guests, stood Robert Ellison, younger but unmistakable. The doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw Detective Reeves standing in the hallway, a manila envelope in his hands. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," he said when she opened the door, "but I found something I thought you should see immediately." At her kitchen table, he removed a newspaper clipping from the envelope. It was yellowed with age, the edges crumbling slightly. "Local photographer found deceased in darkroom," the headline read. The article was dated June 14, 1977. "Robert Ellison," Emily read aloud, age 32, found dead in his darkroom from chemical exposure, survived by no known relatives. She looked up at Reeves, confusion evident in her expression. "But you said he died in 2005 in a car accident." "That's what the records showed," Reeves said quietly. "But this is the same man, I'm certain of it." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. How is that possible? Reeves shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but there's one more thing." He pulled out another photograph, this one clearly much older. The sepia tones faded almost to yellow. "This was in our archives, a group photograph of the Charleston Police Department from 1952. Emily leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat. There, standing at the end of the back row, was Robert Ellison, unmistakable, unchanged. "Who is he?" she whispered. "I don't know," Reeves admitted, "but I think he's still out there, and for some reason he's been watching your family for generations." As if summoned by his words, Emily's phone chimed with a notification. A new email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read simply, "Look outside." With trembling fingers, she opened her laptop and clicked on the email. There was no message, just an attachment, a photograph taken yesterday, judging by her clothing. Emily standing at her living room window, looking out at the street below, and there on the sidewalk across the street, looking up at her window, Robert Ellison. Reeves moved to the window and carefully peered outside. The street was empty, the sidewalk vacant except for fallen leaves skittering in the autumn breeze. "He's not there," he said quietly. "But he was," Emily whispered. He always has been. We just never noticed until now." As they stood in silence, Emily's phone chimed again. Another email, another photograph taken moments ago, showing Emily and Detective Reeves standing at her window, and behind them, reflected in the glass, a familiar face smiled back at them. They both turned slowly, but the apartment remained empty. Yet when they looked back at the photograph, he was there, watching, waiting, always present in the captured moment, yet somehow never present in reality. "He's not supposed to be there," Emily echoed her mother's words from that first night, "but he always has been." Outside, the street remained quiet as darkness fell, the streetlights casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward her building like reaching fingers. In the stillness of her apartment, Emily heard the soft click of a camera shutter, though no camera was visible, preserving this moment for an album she would never see. Story 3. The small town of Millfield rested under a blanket of autumn leaves, the kind that crunch underfoot and whisper secrets to those who listen closely. Rain had fallen steadily for 3 days, leaving the earth soft and the air heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and decaying foliage. It was on the 4th day, when the clouds finally parted, that the Caldwell family's doorbell rang. The sound echoed through their home, a sharp, electric pulse that broke the silence they had grown accustomed to over the past 11 months. Sarah Caldwell's hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob. Later, she would tell Detective Morgan that she knew, somehow she knew, that something significant waited on the other side. The door swung open, and there he stood, 10-year-old Jamie Caldwell, the boy whose school portrait had been taped to telephone poles and grocery store windows across 3 counties since his disappearance last October. "Mom," he said simply. His voice was flat, like a recording played at slightly the wrong speed. When their lost son returned, his parents were overwhelmed with joy, but something about him was off. His laugh was too sharp, his smile forced, and when his mother hugged him, she felt something cold and metallic beneath his skin. Detective Elaine Morgan received the call at 4:17 p.m. on that Thursday afternoon. Her coffee had grown cold beside a stack of case files that needed reviewing, but the Caldwell case had never made it to that pile. It remained open on her desk, a daily reminder of failure. The voice on the other end of the line was hurried, excited. Jamie Caldwell had come home, alive. "He just walked up to the door," David Caldwell explained when Morgan arrived at the house 40 minutes later. Rain had begun to fall again, a gentle patter against the living room windows. He was wearing clothes we don't recognize, clean clothes. Someone was taking care of him. Morgan watched the boy from across the room. He sat perfectly still on the sofa, hands folded in his lap, eyes tracking movements with mechanical precision. He didn't fidget like most children his age. He didn't reach for the cookies Sarah had placed on the coffee table. He simply observed, as if studying the habitat of an unfamiliar species. "Jamie," Morgan said softly, settling into an armchair across from him, "can you tell me where you've been?" The boy tilted his head slightly. "Home," he answered. "I was always home." Morgan's pen hovered above her notepad, the first page still blank after 10 minutes of conversation. Jamie's answers were brief, often nonsensical. Yes, he had been taken. No, he couldn't describe the person. Yes, he had been fed. No, he hadn't been hurt. Home was underground, he said. Home was cold. Home was where the humming never stopped. The medical examination raised more questions than it answered. Jamie was in perfect health, too perfect, according to Dr. Winters. No vitamin deficiencies, despite his claim that he'd eaten only white food for nearly a year. No muscle atrophy, despite saying he rarely moved. And then there were the scars, thin, precise lines along his spine, behind his ears, and at the base of his skull. Surgical scars, Dr. Winters had whispered to Morgan in the hallway outside the examination room. Professional work. And there's something else, the doctor had added, lowering her voice further. The X-rays show anomalies, small metal objects near the base of his brain and along his spinal column. They appear to be some kind of implants. By the third day after Jamie's return, the Caldwells had stopped calling it a miracle. Sarah found her son standing in the backyard at 3 a.m, staring at the stars without blinking. David woke to the sound of Jamie reciting numbers in his bedroom, long sequences that, when recorded and analyzed by the department's technology specialist, appeared to be geographical coordinates for locations scattered across the globe. He's not eating, Sarah confided to Morgan during one of her daily visits. He sits at the table with us and moves food around his plate, but I've never seen him swallow. Her fingers worried at a loose thread on her sweater, and his eyes, sometimes they look reflective, like an animal's in the dark. Morgan increased the surveillance on the Caldwell home. Officers parked discreetly down the street reported that lights in Jamie's room remained on all night. Thermal imaging showed no heat signature from his bedroom during those hours. The boy who had returned to Millfield was becoming less recognizable as Jamie Caldwell with each passing day. On the 7th night after his reappearance, Jamie vanished from his bedroom despite the surveillance. The officers stationed outside saw nothing. The motion sensors installed around the property weren't triggered. The cameras didn't capture his exit. He was simply gone until Morgan received a call from Officer Daniels at 5:23 a.m. "We found him, detective. You need to see this." The location was an abandoned research facility 8 miles outside of town, a concrete building half reclaimed by nature, its existence almost forgotten since its closure in the late 1980s. Jamie stood in what had once been a laboratory, his small frame illuminated by the beam of Officer Daniels' flashlight. The boy's fingers traced symbols etched into the dusty wall symbols that matched the ones Morgan had found drawn in Jamie's notebook. "It started here," Jamie said without turning around. His voice echoed in the empty space. "They needed someone small, someone whose absence would create the right kind of noise." "Who needed someone small, Jamie?" Morgan asked, her voice steady despite the chill crawling up her spine. "The ones who listen." Jamie's hand dropped to his side. "They put pieces of themselves in me to hear what you hear, see what you see. I'm their window." When Morgan took a step forward, Jamie finally turned. In the harsh beam of the flashlight, his eyes reflected not like an animal's, but like polished metal. The surgical scars behind his ears had opened during the night, revealing small, blinking lights beneath the skin. "Jamie isn't here anymore," the boy said, his voice suddenly deeper, resonating unnaturally in the cavernous room. "Jamie served his purpose. We have collected sufficient data." The investigation that followed uncovered a network of similar cases across the country, children who had disappeared and returned changed. Some had been diagnosed with psychiatric conditions, others had been institutionalized, and a few, like Jamie, had eventually been identified as something other than human. Tissue samples revealed advanced technology embedded within organic material, creating perfect mimicries of the children who had been taken. The real Jamie Caldwell was never found. Neither were the 11 other children whose doubles had been placed in communities across the country. The abandoned research facility yielded few clues beyond a partial logo on old documentation, a stylized eye enclosed in a triangle, with the letters Iris beneath it. Government records showed no organization by that name ever officially occupying the facility. Sarah and David Caldwell moved away from Millfield 6 months later. The thing that had pretended to be their son was taken to a secure government facility, where it eventually ceased all functions without explanation. Detective Morgan was reassigned to a different department, but the case remains open on her desk, now accompanied by a growing file of similar incidents. Sometimes, on particularly quiet nights, Morgan finds herself standing by her window, looking up at the stars, wondering if something up there is looking back through borrowed eyes. And in towns across America, parents hold their children a little tighter, checking for the telltale coolness beneath warm skin, listening for laughs that sound just a little too sharp, watching for smiles that never quite reach the eyes. Because not all children who come back are the ones who left. Story 4. The afternoon light filtered through the half-drawn blinds, casting long golden rectangles across the hardwood floor of apartment 4B. 28-year-old Eliza Mercer stood in the center of her new living room, arms crossed in satisfaction as she surveyed the space that was now hers at least for the next 12 months. The rent had been surprisingly affordable for downtown Portland, especially for a recently renovated unit with stainless steel appliances and in-unit laundry. The real estate market had been brutal, but somehow, Eliza had managed to secure this unexpected gem after only 3 weeks of searching. Sometimes luck is just on your side, she had told her mother over the phone that morning, voice tinged with the particular pride that comes from early adult independence. The property management company had been efficient, almost eerily so. The paperwork had gone through without a hitch, the keys delivered by courier the very next day after signing. In the age of housing shortages and bidding wars, Eliza couldn't help but feel she'd somehow beaten the system. Detective Raymond Solano would later note in his case file that no neighbors recalled seeing a moving truck. Eliza had arrived with only 2 suitcases and a backpack. The rest of her belongings would arrive the following weekend from her parents' home in Tacoma. This detail, seemingly inconsequential, would become the first piece in a puzzle that grew more disturbing with each passing day. The initial 3 days passed in the ordinary rhythm of new beginnings. Eliza documented her apartment setup on social media, ordered takeout from nearby restaurants, and began her remote work routine at the small desk positioned near the window overlooking a quiet side street. It was on the 4th evening, while searching for a spare phone charger, that she first noticed something peculiar about the hallway wall. It was just a different texture, she would later explain to investigators, her voice soft but steady in the recorded interview. I ran my hand along it and felt a slight depression where there shouldn't have been one. The wall had been painted the same eggshell white as the rest of the apartment, but under the careful scrutiny of her fingertips, Eliza detected what appeared to be the outline of a door with no handle, no hinges visible from the outside. Initially, she dismissed it as simply part of the building's quirky architecture, perhaps a sealed maintenance access or an old closet that had been closed off during renovation. The following morning, as dawn cast a different quality of light through the apartment, the outline became more apparent. A nearly invisible seam, approximately 6.5 feet tall and 30 inches wide, traced a perfect rectangle in the hallway wall between the bathroom and the bedroom. Curiosity piqued. Eliza inspected it more carefully, noticing how the baseboard continued uninterrupted beneath the mysterious outline, a detail that suggested meticulous planning rather than hasty construction. I remember thinking it was strange that I hadn't noticed it before, Eliza told Detective Solano. It's not like I wasn't paying attention when I first viewed the apartment. What the detective found particularly troubling was that the property listing, which they later subpoenaed, clearly showed only 2 rooms plus a bathroom in the floor plan. There was no indication of any additional space within the apartment's square footage. On the sixth night in her new home, Eliza awoke to a sound she couldn't immediately identify, a soft, rhythmic clicking that seemed to emanate from somewhere within the walls. Half asleep, she attributed it to the building's heating system or perhaps a neighbor's television. But in the morning light, standing before the hidden door outline with a cup of coffee cooling in her hands, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The property management company, when contacted, claimed no knowledge of any sealed rooms. The building was completely renovated 2 years ago, the representative explained in a voice message that would later be entered into evidence. All units were brought up to code and configured according to approved plans. When pressed further, the company suggested that Eliza might be mistaken about what she was seeing. Perhaps it was just a shadow or an irregularity in the paint. Detective Solano would later remark in his notes that the dismissiveness of the property management company was the first red flag. Standard procedure would have been to send maintenance to investigate, especially given potential concerns about hidden structural issues or code violations. On the seventh day, while the afternoon rain tapped gently against her windows, Eliza made a decision. Using a butter knife from her kitchen, she carefully traced the seam of the hidden door, applying pressure at various points until she felt a slight give near what would be chest height. With persistent, gentle force, the concealed door released with a soft click, swinging inward to reveal a space that should not have existed. The room beyond was small, perhaps 6 feet by 8 feet, with no windows and a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were painted an institutional gray that absorbed what little light penetrated the space. But it wasn't the room itself that caused Eliza's breath to catch in her throat. It was what covered nearly every inch of those gray walls. Photographs, dozens of them, all of Eliza. Eliza making dinner in her new kitchen. Eliza sleeping, the blanket pulled up to her chin. Eliza working at her desk, face illuminated by the blue glow of her laptop screen. Eliza in the shower, the image mercifully steamed by condensation but unmistakably her, all taken from angles that could only be possible from within her own apartment. In the center of the room, a small desk held a laptop computer, its screen dark but a small green light indicating it was in sleep mode. Beside it lay a notebook, open to a page filled with meticulous handwriting, times, dates, observations of Eliza's daily routines. The precision was what disturbed me most. Eliza would later tell investigators, her voice barely audible on the recording. Whoever had been watching me knew exactly when I showered, when I slept, when I ordered food. The investigation that followed revealed a disturbing pattern. The property management company, Portland Urban Living, existed only as a web domain and a voicemail box. The previous tenant, whose name appeared on utility records, could not be located. The building's actual ownership was buried beneath layers of LLCs and shell companies that led to dead ends and non-existent addresses. Forensic analysis of the hidden room yielded partial fingerprints that matched no records in the system. The laptop had been wiped clean remotely the moment Eliza had discovered the room, triggered, investigators believed, by a motion sensor hidden in the ceiling corner. The only concrete evidence was the photographs themselves and the notebook containing observations of Eliza's first 6 days in the apartment. What we're looking at, Detective Solano explained to his supervisor in a briefing 3 weeks after the discovery, is a sophisticated surveillance operation. The cameras were hidden in everyday objects, the smoke detector, the bathroom mirror, even the television. All wireless, all transmitting to equipment in that hidden room. Perhaps the most disturbing detail emerged when building inspectors examined the property more thoroughly. The hidden room should not have existed according to the building's original plans. It had been constructed within what should have been dead space between apartments, carefully carved out and finished in a way that suggested professional construction rather than amateur modification. 6 months after Eliza's discovery, the case remained officially open but effectively cold. No suspects had been identified. The property had been sold to new owners who claimed no knowledge of the previous management company. Eliza had long since moved back to Tacoma, her brief independence in Portland now tainted by an invisible watcher whose identity and motives remained unknown. "The thing that still keeps me up at night," Detective Solano confessed to a colleague over coffee one rainy afternoon, "isn't just who was watching her. It's how many other apartments might have rooms like that one. How many other people are being watched right now who haven't found their hidden doors yet." The case file for what became known among Portland PD as the Observer remains open, one more unsolved mystery in a city full of them. Sometimes at night, when the rain taps against his bedroom window, Detective Solano thinks about Eliza Mercer and wonders who might be on the other side of his walls, watching and waiting in a room that isn't supposed to exist. Story 5. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, casting a pale glow across the sterile hospital room. Outside, rain tapped against the window in a gentle, irregular rhythm that seemed to mirror the confusion inside the man's mind. He blinked slowly, his consciousness rising like a bubble through dark water. The white ceiling came into focus first, then the mechanical beep of monitors beside him, steady and persistent. He woke up in a hospital bed, his own name forgotten. The doctors handed him a wallet, IDs, photos of a life he didn't recognize. The man they claimed he was had a family, a job, a home. But when he looked into the mirror, he saw a stranger's face. "Mr. Harrington," the nurse said softly as she adjusted his IV, "you've been unconscious for 3 days. Your family has been very worried." The name floated in the air between them unclaimed. He didn't correct her. Something in the depths of his mind warned him to remain silent, to observe. The wallet they'd given him contained a driver's license for James Harrington, age 42, resident of Cedar Grove. The face in the photo was indeed the face he'd seen in the mirror, a face he didn't recognize as his own. In the quiet hours of that first night, he studied the contents of the wallet like an archaeologist examining artifacts from a forgotten civilization. Credit cards, a membership to the local gym, a tattered photograph of a woman and 2 children, their smiles warm and familiar to the man he was supposed to be, but strangers to him. Detective Meredith Shaw stood at her desk in the precinct, a cup of cooling coffee forgotten at her elbow. The cork board before her held photographs of another man, Andrew Reeves, missing for 7 days now. His disappearance had been flagged as suspicious after his abandoned car was found at Ridgeline Overlook, the keys still in the ignition, his phone on the passenger seat. "Any updates on the Reeves case?" Captain Donovan's voice was low and gravelly, the product of 30 years of police work and too many cigarettes. "Nothing solid," Shaw replied, her finger tracing the timeline they'd constructed. "His wife says he left for work and never arrived. No history of mental health issues, no financial problems, no suspicious activity on his accounts." The captain nodded, his eyes lingering on the photograph of Reeves, a man with kind eyes and a receding hairline, ordinary in every way except for his unexplained absence. "What about the hospital John Doe that came in last week?" he asked. "Any connection?" Shaw shook her head, different physical description. That guy was identified as James Harrington, family confirmed. The man who wasn't James Harrington stood in the driveway of a house he was told was his home. The two-story colonial with its neatly trimmed hedges and cheerful red door should have felt welcoming, but to him, it was as foreign as a movie set. A woman, Sarah, his wife according to the hospital records, watched him from the porch, concern etched across her features. "The doctor said your memory might take time to come back," she said, her voice gentle but strained. "But we're here for you, James. We'll help you remember." Her kindness made the deception harder to bear. He nodded and followed her inside, where photographs lined the walls, evidence of a life he had supposedly lived. Birthdays, holidays, vacations. A history constructed in smiles and captured moments that stirred nothing within him. That night in James Harrington's study, he searched for clues. The meticulous organization of files and books suggested a methodical mind. Tax records, insurance policies, family albums, all in perfect order. But in the bottom drawer of the desk, beneath a false bottom he discovered by accident, he found a small key with no identifying marks. Detective Shaw pulled up to the hospital the following morning, her notepad ready. The unidentified man found wandering along Highway 16 had regained consciousness. The doctors had diagnosed severe amnesia, possibly the result of trauma. As she walked through the antiseptic corridors, Shaw considered the peculiar timing. Two men, both missing pieces of themselves, their cases separated by just days. "He doesn't remember anything," the doctor explained before they entered the room. "Not even his name. We found no identification on him." The man in the bed was gaunt, his skin pale against the white sheets. Dark bruises circled his wrists and ankles. His eyes fluttered open as they approached eyes that were alert and frightened. "Do you know who I am?" he whispered hoarsely when the doctor stepped out. "Please, I need to know who I am." Shaw studied his face, comparing it mentally with the photographs on her desk. "I'm afraid I don't," she said honestly, "but I'm going to help you find out." The key from James Harrington's desk led to a storage unit on the outskirts of town. Standing before the roll-up door, the man who had assumed Harrington's identity felt a creeping dread in his stomach. Whatever lay beyond this door might explain why he had woken up with another man's life forced upon him. The lock turned with a soft click. The door rose with a metallic groan. Inside, the space was mostly empty except for a single chair, a laptop computer, and a wall covered in photographs and notes. He stepped inside, his heart hammering against his ribs. The photographs showed Andrew Reeves, the man from the missing persons report he'd seen on the news, but they weren't official photographs. They were surveillance shots. Reeves going to work, Reeves with his family, Reeves alone in his car. And among them, photographs of James Harrington, the real James Harrington, meeting with Reeves in secluded locations. The laptop required a password. After 3 failed attempts, he sat back, frustrated. The answer had to be here in this room. Why had Harrington been watching Reeves? What connected these two men? And most importantly, who was he, the man caught between their identities? Detective Shaw sat at her desk, comparing the medical records of the unidentified patient with those of Andrew Reeves. The physical descriptions didn't match: height, weight, eye color, all different, but something nagged at her, a connection hovering just beyond her grasp. The hospital had taken fingerprints from the amnesiac patient to help identify him. When the results came back, Shaw stared at her computer screen in disbelief. According to the database, the man in the hospital bed was James Harrington. "But that's impossible," she murmured to herself. James Harrington had been discharged days ago, identified by his family, and had gone home. In the storage unit, the man found a small notebook wedged beneath the chair. The handwriting inside was cramped and urgent. It detailed a plan, Harrington's plan to assume the identity of Andrew Reeves. The notes referenced the project, the formula, and memory transference. Scientific terms mingled with what appeared to be occult references. The final entry was dated the day before he had woken in the hospital. The procedure is ready. Reeves doesn't suspect anything. Once complete, I will have access to everything. Sarah and the children must never know. The new identity is prepared if something goes wrong. As the implications settled over him, a sound at the door made him turn. Sarah Harrington stood in the entrance, her silhouette dark against the fading daylight. "I see you found James's workshop," she said, her voice no longer kind but flat and clinical. "We were wondering how long it would take you." He asked, his mouth suddenly dry. She stepped aside, and a man entered, a man whose face he recognized from the mirror and from the driver's license. The real James Harrington. "You weren't supposed to wake up," Harrington said calmly. "The procedure should have completely overwritten your consciousness with mine, a perfect transfer." Detective Shaw arrived at the Harrington home with 2 officers, a search warrant in hand. The house was empty, beds unmade, drawers left open as if the family had left in a hurry. On the kitchen counter, a single note, "We've gone to join him." In the basement, behind a bookshelf that rolled away to reveal a hidden door, they found a laboratory. Scientific equipment shared space with ancient-looking texts. On a central table lay straps that matched the bruise patterns on the amnesiac patient's wrists and ankles. "What the hell was going on here?" one of the officers whispered. Shaw's flashlight beam caught a series of photographs pinned to a corkboard, James Harrington with various men over the years. In each series, Harrington appeared to age normally while his companions changed. The final series showed Harrington with Andrew Reeves. In the storage unit, the man who now understood he must be Andrew Reeves faced his captors. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why me?" "Because you were perfect," Harrington replied, circling him slowly. "Young, healthy, similar enough in appearance that with minor adjustments, no one would question the change. And most importantly, you had access." "Access to what?" "The neurochemical research at Meridian Labs. Your team is on the verge of a breakthrough that will change humanity, forever true consciousness transfer. But your group would never approve my applications. Too many ethical concerns about my previous work." Harrington's smile didn't reach his eyes. "So I developed my own method, crude but effective, or it should have been." "You're both insane," Reeves said, looking between Harrington and Sarah. "No," Sarah replied, her voice eerily calm. "We're visionaries. James has transferred his consciousness 17 times over the past century. This is just the first time it hasn't worked completely." Detective Shaw stood in the hospital room, watching the man who now had a name, Andrew Reeves. His fingerprints had confirmed it, though his appearance had been altered through what the medical examiner could only describe as sophisticated surgical techniques. "They're gone," she told him gently. "The Harrington house is empty, their accounts cleared out. We've put out an alert, but..." Reeves nodded, understanding. His memories were returning in fragments: a wife, a laboratory, equations that had consumed his professional life. The irony wasn't lost on him. His own research, intended to help trauma victims and those with degenerative brain diseases, had been perverted by a man seeking immortality. "Will I ever get all of my memories back?" he asked. Shaw's expression was compassionate but honest. "The doctors aren't sure. Whatever Harrington did to you has never been documented in medical literature. They found traces of compounds in your system they can't identify. As night fell, Andrew Reeves stood at the window of his hospital room, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, a man with a century of stolen lives continued his escape. A man who had nearly stolen his identity completely. In his dreams that night, faces flashed before him, men he had never met but whose memories lingered like ghosts at the edges of his consciousness. Men whose lives James Harrington had taken. Men whose whispers sometimes rose in his mind when all was quiet. And in those whispers, Reeves heard a warning: Harrington would try again. The procedure hadn't worked perfectly this time, but he would refine it. The next victim might not be so fortunate as to retain pieces of himself. In the darkness of his room, Andrew Reeves made a silent promise to the ghosts and to himself. He would remember, he would find Harrington, and he would end the cycle of stolen memories that had nearly claimed him as its latest victim. Story 6. She was waiting for a call, the receiver resting against her ear. But instead of the familiar voice she expected, she heard a whisper. It repeated her name over and over, growing louder with each breath. When she pulled the phone away, she saw it had never been connected. The small town of Millfield had always prided itself on being unremarkable. Nestled between rolling hills and dense patches of forest, it was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other's routines, and the local diner served the same special every Thursday. Detective Sarah Mercer had spent her entire career in the Millfield Police Department, handling mainly petty thefts and occasional domestic disputes. But on a crisp autumn morning in 1982, as leaves drifted lazily to the ground outside her office window, everything changed. The call came in at 8:17 a.m. Eleanor Hayes, a 34-year-old librarian who lived alone in a modest house on Maple Street, had not shown up for work. This was unprecedented. Eleanor's punctuality was legendary in Millfield. Her colleague Martha had tried calling Eleanor's home several times, but the line just rang and rang, echoing emptily into a house where no one answered. Detective Mercer drove slowly to Eleanor's home, the gravel crunching softly beneath the tires of her department-issued sedan. The house sat back from the road, partially obscured by two large oak trees whose branches swayed gently in the morning breeze. Everything looked normal from the outside: newspaper on the porch, mail in the box, Eleanor's blue Ford Escort parked in the driveway. The front door was unlocked. This was unusual in itself. Eleanor Hayes was known to be cautious, especially living alone. Detective Mercer called out Eleanor's name as she stepped inside, her voice absorbed by the stillness of the house. The living room was immaculate, everything in its place. A half-empty cup of tea sat on the coffee table, a thin film formed on its surface. Next to it, a book lay open, its pages waiting for a reader who would never return. In the kitchen, breakfast preparations had been abandoned. Bread in the toaster, never depressed. A carton of eggs on the counter, one removed and cracked into a bowl, the whisk resting beside it. It was as if Eleanor had simply vanished mid-morning routine. Detective Mercer moved through the house methodically, each step accompanied by the soft creak of the hardwood floors. In the hallway, the landline phone hung from its cord, swinging almost imperceptibly, as if recently disturbed. When Mercer picked it up, the dial tone hummed steadily in her ear, a perfectly functional phone. It was in the bedroom that she found the first real indication that something was wrong. Eleanor's bed was unmade, the sheets twisted as if she had struggled against them. On the nightstand, a small notebook lay open, a pen beside it. The last entry, dated the previous evening, contained just 4 words: "The voice is back." Over the next few days, Detective Mercer pieced together fragments of Aliner's life. Interviews with friends and colleagues painted a picture of a quiet, intelligent woman who kept mostly to herself. She had moved to Millfield 5 years ago after divorcing her husband in Chicago. No one knew much about her previous life. Aliner rarely spoke about it. Martha, the colleague who had reported her missing, remembered something peculiar. About a month ago, Aliner seemed different, she told Detective Mercer, her fingers nervously tracing patterns on the diner tabletop between them. She kept checking the library phones, picking them up and listening, then hanging up without dialing. When I asked her about it, she just said she was making sure they worked properly. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Mercer discovered a small box tucked away at the back of Aliner's closet. Inside were newspaper clippings about a case from Chicago, a series of threatening phone calls made to women living alone, all from a caller who knew intimate details about their lives. The calls had stopped abruptly 3 years ago when the primary suspect, Raymond Fowler, was found dead in his apartment, an apparent suicide. Aliner's name wasn't mentioned in any of the articles, but a yellow sticky note attached to one clipping simply read, "Third victim." Detective Mercer contacted the Chicago Police Department. The detective who had handled the case had retired, but his files were still accessible. Aliner Hayes, then using her married name, Aliner Collins, had indeed received multiple threatening calls over a period of 2 months. The caller would whisper her name, describe what she was wearing, what she had done that day. Sometimes he would just breathe into the phone, letting her know he was there, listening. After Fowler's death, the case was closed. Aliner had divorced her husband, changed her name back to Hayes, and moved to Millfield for a fresh start. The threatening calls had been attributed to Fowler, a telephone company employee with access to customer information and a history of stalking behavior. But if Fowler was dead, who had Aliner heard on the phone, and why had she written that the voice was back? Detective Mercer returned to Aliner's house, this time focusing on the phone system. She noticed something odd, a small scratch mark on the wall plate where the phone line entered the house. When she removed the plate, she found that the wiring had been tampered with. Someone had spliced into Aliner's phone line, creating a way to intercept her calls or speak through her line without actually calling her number. The technician who examined the modification estimated it had been done recently, perhaps within the last 2 months. This coincided with Aliner's increasingly anxious behavior at the library, her checking of phone lines, her growing paranoia. As Detective Mercer left Aliner's house that evening, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the front yard. A neighbor, watering plants on his porch, waved to her. "Any news about Aliner?" he called out. "Not yet," Mercer replied, approaching him. "Did you know her well?" "Not really," the man shrugged. "She kept to herself, though I did notice she'd been getting a lot of visitors lately. A man in a telephone company van was here several times. Thought maybe she was having line problems." Mercer froze. "Did you see what he looked like?" "Middle-aged, thin, always wore a cap pulled low. Couldn't really see his face." The next day, Detective Mercer requested records from the local telephone company. No service calls had been scheduled for Aliner's address in the past year. The company had no employee matching the description given by the neighbor. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of Aliner's phone revealed partial fingerprints that didn't match Aliner's. When run through the database, they came back as a possible match to Raymond Fowler, the man who had supposedly died 3 years ago in Chicago. Detective Mercer contacted Chicago again, this time requesting more detailed information about Fowler's death. The responding officer sent over the file. Fowler had been found in his apartment, pills and alcohol beside him, a suicide note expressing remorse for his actions. His body had been badly decomposed, making identification difficult. The dental records used to confirm his identity had been provided by a local dentist, but there was a note in the file indicating that a follow-up with the dentist had been attempted and the office had been found permanently closed, the dentist having moved away with no forwarding address. The pieces started to fit together in a disturbing pattern. Had Fowler faked his own death, used another body, provided false dental records, and disappeared only to resurface in Millfield, tracking down one of his former victims? Eleanor Hayes remained missing. Her car stayed in the driveway, her mail accumulated, and her absence created a hollow space in the town's fabric. Detective Mercer posted officers to watch the house, hoping Fowler, if he was indeed alive, might return. On the seventh night of the watch at 2:13 a.m., the officer on duty noticed a flicker of light inside the house. By the time backup arrived, whoever had been inside was gone, but they had left something behind, Eleanor's notebook, now with a new entry that hadn't been there before. In handwriting that wasn't Eleanor's, a single line, "She always liked my voice." The case remained open for years, becoming one of Millfield's unsolved mysteries. Eleanor Hayes was never found. Raymond Fowler, if that's who had been in Millfield, vanished without a trace. Detective Mercer eventually retired, the weight of the unsolved case following her into civilian life. Some nights, alone in her home, she would find herself staring at her phone, wondering. And sometimes, when the house was completely silent, she could almost convince herself she heard a faint whisper coming from the receiver, even when it rested securely in its cradle, disconnected from any call. Story 7. The old mansion was an eyesore, but it had always been there, abandoned and decaying. Then, one morning, the locals noticed it had shifted, not just a little. It had moved halfway down the street. The movement was first noticed by Eleanor Winters, who had walked her golden retriever past the Victorian manor every Tuesday for 14 years. The dog stopped, confused by the altered landscape, its ears perked up in silent alarm. Eleanor squinted through the morning fog, her breath forming small clouds that dissipated into the cool autumn air. The familiar silhouette of the Blackwood mansion now cast its shadow over a different stretch of Elm Street, as if it had decided to relocate during the night without disturbing a single blade of grass. "I know what I saw," Eleanor would later tell Detective Samuel Hayes, her voice steady despite the impossibility of her claim. "That house was where it had been since before I was born, and now it's not." Detective Hayes arrived at the scene by late afternoon, the leather of his notebook making a soft cracking sound as he opened it to a fresh page. The pen scratched gently against the paper as he recorded the date, October 12th. The mansion, a 3-story Victorian with faded blue paint peeling like dead skin, stood exactly 127 feet from its original foundation. The concrete slab where it once rested remained, cracked and exposed, like an open wound in the earth. "It doesn't make sense," said Chief Engineer Martin Ross, his calloused fingers tracing the clean edge where the house had once connected to the foundation. "This would require heavy machinery, dozens of workers, permits, noise. Someone would have heard something." But no one had. The street was residential, houses spaced generously apart. Mrs. Abernathy at number 17 was a notorious insomniac who spent her nights watching old films with the volume low. She had seen nothing, heard nothing. The night had swallowed whatever operation had relocated a 9,000 square foot structure without disturbing a neighborhood where even a car alarm was cause for complaint. As Hayes walked the perimeter of the house, the gravel crunching rhythmically beneath his shoes, he noticed something peculiar about the transplanted building. Its windows, once boarded and sealed, now showed thin slits of darkness between warped wooden planks, like eyelids not quite shut, watching. The Blackwood mansion had been empty for 37 years, since the night James Blackwood locked every door and vanished, leaving behind a half-finished dinner and a record still spinning on the phonograph. The case had gone cold before Hayes was even born. Now, as he circled the inexplicably relocated house, he felt the weight of that unsolved mystery pressing against him like the autumn humidity. "We need to go inside," Hayes told Officer Daniels, a rookie whose wide eyes betrayed his unease. "Something's different." The front door, once secured with heavy chains and a padlock, now hung slightly ajar. A sliver of darkness invited them in, promising answers but whispering of danger. Hayes felt his heart rate increase, the steady thump-thump becoming more insistent as he placed his palm against the aged wood. The door gave way with a prolonged creak that seemed to exhale into the stillness of the afternoon. The air inside was thick with dust and something else, a strange metallic scent that reminded Hayes of old pennies. Their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper and furniture draped in yellowed sheets. Everything was as it had been described in the case files, preserved like a museum exhibit to a vanished life. "Sir," Daniels called from the dining room, his voice echoing slightly in the empty house. "You should see this." On the long mahogany table, a place setting waited. A china plate, silverware arranged with perfect precision, a crystal glass filled with what appeared to be red wine. Hayes leaned closer, the beam of his flashlight illuminating the untouched meal. It wasn't dust-covered or decayed. It looked fresh, steam still rising from a cut of meat that glistened with moisture. "That's impossible," Hayes whispered, more to himself than to Daniels. As they moved deeper into the house, each room revealed similar anachronisms: a bathtub filled with clear water, the surface undisturbed, a bed with sheets turned down invitingly, a desk with a fountain pen positioned over blank paper, a drop of ink suspended at its tip, defying gravity and time. In the library, they found the first body. Not James Blackwood, as Hayes had begun to suspect they might discover, but Alina Winters. She lay peacefully on a chaise lounge, her eyes closed as if in sleep, her golden retriever curled at her feet, both perfectly still. The impossible reality dawned on Hayes with slow, creeping certainty. They had never left the park this morning. They had never spoken to him. His interview with Alina existed only in his memory, implanted somehow, a false recollection as solid as any truth. The second body was in the study. Mrs. Abernathy, the insomniac, positioned in an armchair facing a small television that played silent black and white images. The third was Engineer Ross, kneeling by the foundation as if still examining it. And in the master bedroom, Officer Daniels lay across the freshly made bed. Yet Daniels still stood beside Hayes, his flashlight beam trembling slightly as it illuminated his own face, peaceful in eternal repose. "What is this?" Daniels whispered, his voice cracking. Hayes didn't answer. He was staring at the last door in the hallway, slightly ajar, warm yellow light spilling out in a thin rectangle across the dusty floor. As they approached, the soft scratch of a phonograph needle touching vinyl reached their ears, followed by the gentle opening notes of a forgotten melody. The room beyond was James Blackwood's study, unchanged from the night he disappeared. A half-eaten meal lay on a small table. The record spun lazily on the phonograph, and at the desk, his back to the door, sat a figure silhouetted against the warm lamplight. Mr. Blackwood, Hayes called, his professional demeanor slipping slightly. The figure turned, revealing not the face of James Blackwood, but Hayes' own features, aged and weathered by decades not yet lived. The older Hayes smiled with gentle recognition. "I've been waiting for you," he said, his voice identical to the detective's own, but deeper, worn by years. "For us." "What is this place?" Hayes asked, feeling Daniel's presence behind him fade away, becoming less substantial with each passing second. "This is where we all come in the end," the older Hayes replied, gesturing to the window where, impossibly, the house now overlooked not Elm Street, but an infinite landscape of identical houses, stretching to a horizon that never arrived. "The house moves for each of us when it's time." Hayes understood then, with a clarity that transcended fear, that he would never file a report on the Blackwood case. He would never leave the house that had moved itself into position to collect him, just as it had collected the others. In the distance, through the window, he could see another Victorian mansion beginning its slow, impossible journey across the landscape, seeking its next resident. The older Hayes gestured to an empty chair beside him. "Sit," he said, "we have so much to discuss now that you're here, now that you're home." Outside on Elm Street, curious neighbors gathered at a respectful distance from the police tape surrounding the old foundation where the Blackwood mansion had stood for generations. The house itself was gone, not moved, not relocated, but simply vanished overnight without a trace. Detective Samuel Hayes had gone missing while investigating the disappearance, leaving behind only his notebook open to a blank page and a pen that leaked a single drop of ink onto the concrete slab, never quite falling, suspended in a moment that would stretch into eternity. Story 8. Dust motes drifted lazily through shafts of late afternoon light in the old Victorian home on Maple Street. The rhythmic tap of hammers and the occasional whir of power tools had been the soundtrack of the Henderson family's lives for the past 3 weeks. The renovation was supposed to be straightforward: knock down a few walls, expand the kitchen. But as the workers tore through drywall, they uncovered a hidden hallway. At the end, a door that led to a room full of children's toys. And a journal with their own names written inside. The lead contractor, Marco Delgado, stood motionless in the doorway, his calloused fingers still gripping the tarnished brass doorknob. The air inside was different, stale, yet somehow charged with something that made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. The room had no windows, only a single light fixture with a pull chain that swayed almost imperceptibly in air that shouldn't have been moving at all. Detective Elaine Harper's shoes made soft, clicking sounds against the hardwood floor as she made her way through the Henderson home. 23 years on the force had taught her to approach each case with measured curiosity rather than assumptions. Her partner, Detective James Mercer, followed a few steps behind, his notebook already open, pen poised to capture details that might later prove significant. The house was built in 1897, Mrs. Henderson explained, her voice thin with anxiety. She was a tall woman with prematurely silver hair that she wore in a tight bun. "We purchased it 6 months ago. The previous owners had it for nearly 30 years, the Sutherlands." Harper nodded, making a mental note of the name. The Sutherlands, she would need to speak with them. Her gaze drifted to the photographs lining the hallway, the Hendersons and their 2 children, Emily and Michael, ages 9 and 12. Ordinary family moments frozen in time. "And you had no idea this room existed?" Harper asked, her tone neutral, unaccusatory. Mr. Henderson shook his head. "It wasn't on any of the floor plans. We've gone through all the documentation from when we bought the place." Detective Mercer cleared his throat. And the journal you mentioned. Mrs. Henderson's hands trembled slightly as she handed over a leather-bound book, its edges worn with time and handling. This is what frightened us the most, our names, our children's names, but it's dated from 15 years ago. Harper accepted the journal, the leather cool against her fingertips. She opened it carefully, conscious of potential fingerprints or trace evidence. The first page revealed neat, almost childlike handwriting. The Henderson family, Robert father, Catherine mother, Emily daughter, Michael son. They will come in the summer, they will change everything. They must not find this room. Harper kept her expression neutral, but she felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the hallway. The central heating hummed quietly beneath the floorboards, yet the air around them seemed to grow colder. "May I see the room now?" she asked. The hidden room was approximately 10 feet by 12 feet. Children's toys from various eras were arranged with an unsettling precision, a wooden rocking horse from perhaps the 1950s, a collection of porcelain dolls with vacant eyes that seemed to follow movement, plastic action figures from the 1980s, and newer items that might have been purchased just a few years ago. In the center of the room sat a small table with 4 tiny chairs, as if set for a tea party that never took place. On the table was a tea set, the cups filled with what appeared to be water, but which Harper knew would need to be tested. Nothing in this room could be taken at face value. The walls were covered with drawings, childlike sketches of houses, families, and one recurring image, a tall figure without a face standing behind a group of children. Some of the drawings had been dated. The earliest was from 1923, the most recent from just 2 years ago. "No one has lived in this house continuously since it was built," Mr. Henderson said, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb whatever presence might linger there. "It's changed hands at least 12 times. Detective Mercer was photographing everything methodically, the toys, the drawings, the journal entries. "We'll need to check property records, see if there's any pattern to who's lived here, and any reports of missing children in the area over the years." Harper nodded, her attention caught by something scrawled in tiny letters in the corner of one drawing. "He knows when they're sleeping. He knows when they're awake." The investigation stretched into weeks. The forensics team found fingerprints belonging to at least 17 different children in the hidden room, none matching any in the national database. The tea in the cups turned out to be ordinary tap water, but with mineral content inconsistent with the local water supply. It matched the composition of well water that would have been used in the house before city plumbing was installed in 1943. The property records revealed a disturbing pattern. Each family that had occupied the house had children. Each stayed an average of 4 years before moving away abruptly, often to distant states. Follow-up interviews with the families they could locate revealed consistent stories of children having imaginary friends who knew things they shouldn't have known, family secrets, future plans not yet discussed, names of people the family would later meet. The Sutherlands, the family who had lived there longest, were now residing in a retirement community in Arizona. Mrs. Sutherland, now 86, spoke to Detective Harper over a video call, her rheumy eyes clouded with cataracts, but her memory surprisingly sharp. "We walled it up," she confessed. "Summer of 1992. Our granddaughter was visiting and she started talking about the children in the wall. She said they told her things when people would die, what secrets people kept. She knew things a 6-year-old couldn't possibly know." "Did you ever see these children?" Harper asked. Mrs. Sutherland's weathered face creased into a frown. Not the children, but sometimes late at night I'd see him, a tall man standing in the corner of our bedroom, just watching, always watching. The breakthrough came when they located a reference to the original architect, Frederick Chambers, who had designed several homes in the area during the 1890s. 3 of his other houses had been demolished over the years, and in each case, the demolition crews had discovered similar hidden rooms, all containing children's toys from different eras. In the county archives, Detective Mercer found a yellowed newspaper from 1901 with a small article about Chambers' death. He had hanged himself in his own home, leaving behind a cryptic suicide note, "They were never mine to keep." The journal found in the Henderson home yielded one final, chilling detail. Under ultraviolet light, invisible ink appeared on what had seemed to be blank pages at the back. A list of children's names, dozens of them, with dates spanning more than a century. The last entry was dated just 1 month before the Hendersons began their renovation. Emily Henderson, Michael Henderson, they are perfect. They will be mine soon. The Hendersons never returned to the house on Maple Street. They left behind their belongings, forfeited their deposit, and moved across the country. The case remained officially open but inactive, classified as a historical investigation of unexplained phenomena in the department's records. Detective Harper occasionally drove by the old Victorian in the years that followed. It remained unoccupied, a for sale sign gradually weathering in the front yard. Sometimes in the early evening when the light hit the upstairs windows just right, she thought she could see movement behind the glass, small figures, perhaps, gathered at the window. The last time she passed by, she noticed a moving truck in the driveway. A new family was unpacking, a couple with 3 young children, their laughter carrying across the front lawn as they explored their new home. Harper slowed her car but did not stop. What could she say that wouldn't sound like madness, that wouldn't be dismissed as urban legend or superstition? In her rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of the tallest upstairs window. For just a moment, she thought she saw a figure there, not a child, but something much taller, its featureless face pressed against the glass. By the time she turned around to look again, there was nothing there but the reflection of clouds moving slowly across an empty sky. Story 9, the evening light filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows across the Millers' living room. Outside, the suburban neighborhood of Oakwood Hills settled into its familiar rhythm, sprinklers ticking methodically, distant lawn mowers humming their final rounds before dusk. Detective Sarah Reeves sat quietly, her pen barely audible against the small notebook balanced on her knee. Across from her, Catherine and David Miller perched on the edge of their sofa, their faces drained of color beneath the warm glow of a table lamp. "Walk me through it again," Detective Reeves said, her voice deliberately measured, like someone testing thin ice. "When did you first notice something wasn't right?" Catherine's fingers twisted around each other, bones prominent beneath pale skin. It was dinner time. We picked him up from Westlake Elementary at 3:30, just like every Tuesday. Everything seemed normal. Her voice caught on the last word. The detective nodded, allowing the silence to breathe between them. Through the kitchen doorway, a social worker sat with a small boy who was methodically arranging and rearranging a set of colored pencils on the table. From this angle, he looked like any other 8-year-old, sandy brown hair falling across his forehead, a blue t-shirt with a cartoon character Detective Reeves didn't recognize. David Miller cleared his throat. "We had spaghetti for dinner. It's Ethan's favorite." He spoke in present tense, as though by doing so he could preserve something essential, but he wouldn't eat it, just pushed it around his plate. When Catherine asked if he wanted something else, he just stared at her with this expression. "What kind of expression?" Reeves asked, her pen hovering over the page. "Like he was studying her," David whispered, "like he was trying to figure out how to act." The detective made a small note, her writing unhurried, creating a gentle scratching sound in the quiet room. Outside, a car door slammed, making Catherine flinch. The wall clock ticked forward, marking time in a world that had suddenly lost its certainty. After dinner, Catherine continued, her gaze fixed on some middle distance. I asked him about his day at school. He always tells me about recess, about what books they read in circle time, but he just shrugged and said it was fine. Ethan never says fine. He always has stories, details. David reached for his wife's hand. That's when we started asking more questions. His teacher's name, what he had for lunch, where he'd put his science project. He got some right, but others. He shook his head. Others he just stared at us with this strange smile. "And then he said it," Catherine whispered. "We asked him what was wrong, and he looked right at us and said, 'Your real son is still at school.'" The air in the room seemed to thicken. Through the kitchen doorway, the boy continued arranging his colored pencils, now by size rather than color. Detective Reeves observed him for a moment before turning back to the parents. "What did you do then?" "We called the police immediately," David said. While I was on the phone, Catherine tried to talk to him more, to understand what he meant. Catherine's voice dropped even lower. He knew things about us, about our house. He knew where the bathroom was, where the cups are kept in the kitchen. But when I showed him his favorite stuffed animal, a panda he's had since he was 3, he just looked at it like he'd never seen it before. Detective Reeves nodded, allowing the weight of their words to settle. She had been with the missing persons unit for 11 years, but this case was already carving out its own unsettling space in her experience. "We've sent officers to Westlake Elementary," she said. "The school closed at 4:30, but the principal and several staff members are returning to help us access the building and security footage." "Do you think," David started, then stopped, as if afraid to voice the thought. Detective Reeves turned to a fresh page in her notebook. The paper made a soft, intimate sound. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I need to ask you some more detailed questions about Ethan, about routines, distinctive features, anything that only you and your son would know." As they began this careful inventory of their child's life, School Resource Officer Tom Hadley was already walking the eerily quiet hallways of Westlake Elementary with Principal Marion Winters. Their footsteps echoed against the polished floors, past walls decorated with student artwork and motivational posters. The emptiness of a school after hours always carried a peculiar kind of silence, expectant, as if the building itself was merely holding its breath until morning. "Ethan Miller," Principal Winters confirmed, her face tense with concern. "3rd grade, Mrs. Lowell's class. He was definitely here today. I saw him myself during lunch period." They reached the security office, where Principal Winters used her key card to access the room. The monitor flickered to life, displaying a grid of camera feeds from around the campus. "Let's start with the pickup area," Officer Hadley suggested, his voice low. They scrolled back to 3:15 p.m., watching as parents began arriving in the designated zone. Cars moved forward in a neat procession. Children were released one by one under the watchful eyes of staff members. At 3:28, the Millers' sedan appeared in the line. There, Principal Winters pointed. That's their car. At 3:31, a small figure with a blue backpack approached the vehicle. The camera angle showed only the back of the child's head as a staff member checked the placard in the car window, then nodded. The car door opened, the child climbed in, and the vehicle moved forward. "Can we see the classroom exit?" Officer Hadley asked. They switched to another camera view, showing children filing out of Mrs. Lowell's classroom at dismissal time. They watched closely as students emerged, trying to identify Ethan Miller among them. "Wait," Principal Winters said suddenly. "Go back about 2 minutes." Officer Hadley rewound the footage. They watched again as children streamed out, backpacks bouncing. Principal Winters froze the frame and pointed to a child partially obscured by others. "That's Ethan," she said with certainty, "but look at his shirt." In the grainy footage, they could make out a child wearing what appeared to be a red t-shirt with a pattern that might have been stripes or a logo. Officer Hadley felt a chill settle between his shoulder blades. The Millers described him wearing a blue shirt today. They looked at each other, the implication hanging in the air between them. Principal Winters reached for her phone. "We need to check if any children are still in the building." Back at the Miller home, Detective Reeves was showing Catherine and David a series of photographs taken from the school's yearbook. "This is from last fall," she explained. "Can you identify Ethan for me?" Catherine pointed without hesitation to a smiling boy in the second row. Detective Reeves made a note, then glanced toward the kitchen, where the social worker was now helping the boy with a cup of water. From this angle, the resemblance to the yearbook photo was remarkable, the same cowlick at the crown, the same slightly prominent ears. Her phone vibrated silently against her hip. Excusing herself, she stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Reeves," she answered quietly. "Detective, this is Officer Hadley at Westlake Elementary. We've reviewed the security footage and something's not adding up. The child who got into the Miller's car was wearing a blue shirt, but Principal Winters has identified Ethan Miller leaving his classroom wearing red." His voice dropped lower. "We're doing a full sweep of the building now." Detective Reeves felt a familiar tightening in her chest that came with cases taking unexpected turns. "Keep me posted," she said. "I'm going to request additional units." She returned to the living room, maintaining her composed expression. Years of experience had taught her the delicate balance between urgency and calm. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, does Ethan have any friends who look similar to him? Anyone who might be confused for him from a distance?" David frowned. "There's a boy named Lucas in his class. They're both about the same height, similar hair color, but up close you wouldn't mistake them." Catherine's eyes widened suddenly. "Lucas Sheffield, he's been to our house for playdates. He would know the layout of our home." Her voice became urgent. "Detective, what's happening?" Before Detective Reeves could form a response, her phone vibrated again. "Excuse me," she said, stepping into the hallway once more. "Detective," Officer Hadley's voice was tight with controlled tension. "We found a child in the art supply closet, male, approximately 8 years old, wearing a red striped shirt. He's disoriented but conscious. Says his name is Ethan Miller." In the kitchen, the boy who had come home with the Millers carefully aligned his colored pencils in a perfect row, humming a tune that neither parent recognized. The investigation would later reveal that Lucas Sheffield had meticulously planned the deception for weeks. His own troubled home life had led to an obsession with the Millers' seemingly perfect family. School records showed a history of behavioral concerns that had somehow fallen through the cracks of an overloaded system. In his confusion and desperation, Lucas had convinced himself that he could simply step into Ethan's life. What he hadn't counted on was his inability to fully become someone else, to know the intimate language that exists between parents and child, the countless small moments that define a family. The wrong child had come home, but in the quiet space between recognition and doubt, two families would find their lives irrevocably connected. As Detective Reeves would note in her final report, sometimes the most unsettling crimes are not those of violence, but those that challenge our most fundamental assumptions that we know, without question, the people we love. Story 10, the aged apartment exuded a sense of history, each creak and groan of the heating system, the rattling of the pipes, all part of its time-worn charm, or so she tried to convince herself. But one day she heard it, a voice, barely audible yet undeniably present, drifting through the vents. It wasn't the usual background noise of a neighbor's conversation. This voice whispered, calling out her name. Curiosity and apprehension mingled in her as she leaned closer, pressing her ear against the metal grate. A sudden chill brushed her cheek, followed by a soft, almost playful declaration, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw stood solemn in the heart of the empty apartment, her focus locked on the rusty vent cover pried from the wall. The forensics team moved with precision around her, capturing every detail with their cameras. The missing woman, Elena Reeves, had vanished without a trace until a peculiar odor caught the attention of the building manager. What they unearthed within the ventilation system defied logic. She claimed to hear voices through the vents, Officer Patel relayed, scanning his notes. But the building management dismissed her complaints as mere quirks of the old heating setup. Kneeling by the vent, Shaw observed the scratches lining its edges. These marks weren't made by tools, she murmured to herself, noting the desperation evident in the deep gouges, a silent plea for escape from within. Elena was a beloved figure, a kindergarten teacher with a green thumb and a classroom full of thriving plants. Her absence was felt keenly by her students, who crafted cards in her honor. Her sister, the one who reported her disappearance, revealed that Elena had grown increasingly paranoid in the days leading up to her vanishing act. She was convinced someone was watching her, speaking to her through the vents in her apartment. Her sister trembled as she recounted, "I thought it was just work stress getting to her." Shaw surveyed the apartment anew, noticing the meticulously made bed, the lonely coffee mug in the sink, and a chair placed directly under the vent, as if waiting for a listener. The forensic report uncovered unsettling clues, fibers matching Elena's cardigan found in the vent, a foreign fingerprint on the inside of the vent cover, and haunting audio recordings from Elena's phone. Alone in her car, rain drumming on the roof, Shaw listened to those recordings. Elena's voice filled with trepidation, calling out, "If you're real, say something." The subsequent silence stretched until a faint whisper emerged, barely audible, "Elena, dear Elena, let me in." Delving into the building's past revealed a disturbing pattern. Previous tenants had abruptly left, some citing strange noises within the walls, while others reported hallucinations of voices from the vents. The building superintendent, Harold Weber, appeared cooperative but evasive during questioning, his demeanor shifting when probed about apartment 4B. A hidden access panel in Elena's bathroom unveiled a maintenance passage running through the walls, granting unauthorized entry to the ventilation system. Inside, a cache of belongings hinted at a secret occupant, someone who had been lurking, observing, whispering. Weber's pristine apartment seemed devoid of personal touches, except for his computer. Files meticulously organized by apartment numbers unveiled a chilling obsession with Alina and prior tenants. A digital log chronicled his twisted relationship with them, culminating in a macabre plan to lure Alina into the walls with him. A storage unit linked to Weber yielded trophies from past victims, solidifying his disturbing fixation. Upon his calm arrest, Weber cryptically remarked to Shaw, "They all hear me eventually. The building speaks through me." The truth of Alina's fate emerged through forensic analysis. She had been drugged and coerced into the ventilation system, her oxygen dwindling as she navigated the metallic maze, drawn by the false promises whispered in the shadows. Families of past tenants surfaced, sharing tales of anxiety, paranoia, and missing possessions, all linked to the unseen predator within the walls. Weber's trial, marked by eerie composure and a failed insanity plea, ended swiftly with a unanimous guilty verdict. As Weber was escorted away, he left Shaw with a haunting parting message: "The whispers never cease. The building remembers." The apartment building now sits empty, its walls echoing with phantom murmurs and chilling drafts. Despite renovations and new ownership, residents are unsettled by inexplicable sounds from the vents, whispers in the walls that echo the building's unsettling past. The heating system groans, the pipes rattle a symphony of eerie familiarity that residents choose to dismiss as commonplace. At least, that's what they tell themselves. Story 11. The worn envelope, its corners tinged with age, bore a fresh stamp, as if just whisked away by the hands of fate. The detective, with steady hands, unfolded its contents. A solitary sheet of paper greeted her, the words typed hastily in a font that staggered across the page. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a dampness, a metallic scent lingering in the air. And there, at the bottom, a reddish mark caught her attention, distinct from the ink. Detective Sarah Morgan, her gloved hands moving with practiced precision, secured the letter in an evidence bag. The forensics team's findings confirmed her suspicions. The reddish stain was human blood, a chilling link to an unsolved homicide that had shadowed the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, a tragic tapestry of stab wounds haunting her still form. Her missing laptop, scattered notes, all whispered of a story gone awry, a tale cut short by violence. Despite the countless interviews and tireless investigations, the case had grown cold, its secrets locked away. And now this letter, a phantom from the past, had found its way to the homicide division, a cryptic message veiled in shadows. The paper and envelope yielded few fingerprints, only ghostly smudges hinting at a cautious sender. Yet the postmark shimmered like a beacon, a slender thread to grasp in the darkness. Morgan gathered her team, their footsteps echoing in the briefing room, a sanctuary of secrets and silent whispers. Crime scene photos adorned the walls, a mosaic of sorrow and unanswered questions. She affixed the letter's image at the heart of it all. "This changes everything," she murmured, the weight of truth heavy in the air. "Our killer reveals a crack in their armor, a shard of remorse." Detective James Chen, a steadfast companion in this dance with shadows, scrutinized the letter. "Or a mask to deceive," he mused. "The blood, a crimson curtain to obscure the truth." The forensic journey led them to a vintage typewriter, its echoes from a bygone era, a relic scarce yet not beyond reach. They cast their net wide, reaching out to antique havens and collectors, following the elusive trail. As the investigation blossomed, they retraced Rebecca's steps, her courage etched in the memories of those she touched. Her editor painted a portrait of a warrior for truth, a seeker of shadows in the realm of corruption. Her final quest entwined with a family's legacy, a tapestry of power and deceit. The detectives turned to Michael Barnes, Rebecca's once distraught lover, now a figure caught in the web of suspicion. His facade cracked under the weight of the letter, revealing hidden currents beneath his veneer. She feared she was being watched, he confessed, his gaze haunted by what could have been. I dismissed her warnings, blind to the danger lurking in the shadows. As the threads of fate unfurled, a second letter arrived, a mirror to the first in its chilling contents, a tale woven in blood and ink, whispering of secrets untold. Her knowledge was a dagger in the dark, it confessed, a truth that cut too deep, too close. The path led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, a house of ghosts and whispers. The eldest son, Richard, stood amidst his collection of relics, a shadow of guilt dancing in his eyes. The forensics team's revelation of fibers from the envelopes tied to a custom stationery, a thread that led to the youngest daughter, Eleanor. Her confession unraveled a tapestry of deceit, a brother's dark design. A hidden chamber, a trove of damning evidence, bore witness to the sin that stained their hands. The typewriter, a silent witness to the crimes of the past, whispered its secrets in the dead of night. The truth, a blade poised to strike. The echoes of betrayal reverberated as the final act unfurled. Bank records, a trail of treachery, led to Michael's doorstep, a pawn in a game of shadows. His guilt spilled forth, a river of regret and despair. I sought to silence her voice, he confessed, to shield the darkness that dwelt within the family's heart. And in Eleanor's trembling hands, a recording, a damning testimony to the sins of the past. Richard's voice, a viper's hiss in the darkness, sealed his fate. The courtroom, a stage of reckoning, bore witness to the unveiling of truth. Richard's protestations crumbled beneath the weight of evidence, a castle built on shifting sands. Guilt, an invisible shackle, bound him to his fate. The jury, custodians of justice, rendered their verdict with solemn resolve. And as the gavel fell, a chapter closed, a tale of shadows laid to rest. Detective Morgan, a silent guardian in the realm of the lost, offered solace to Rebecca's kin. Words failed in the wake of grief, but justice, a balm for wounded souls, whispered its promise. The blood-stained letters, relics of a shattered past, found their sanctuary in the halls of justice, a testament to the fragility of deceit. And in the quiet hum of the typewriter, in the echo of keys against the void, a lesson echoed through the corridors of time, a reminder that even the darkest secrets cast shadows, and that in the realm of the unseen, truth waits patiently to be unveiled. Story 12. She had decided to freshen up the nursery before the little one's arrival. The walls wore a worn-out shade of blue, a color that seemed to hold secrets and tales within its fading layers. As she applied the first stroke of white paint, something unexpected emerged from beneath the faint outline of letters, barely discernible at first, then gradually becoming more defined and legible. A message hidden beneath the surface. Don't let it hear you. Her breath hitched in her throat. Stepping back, her eyes caught sight of something unsettling, tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, positioned too high on the wall for any child to have reached. This discovery within the nursery of the Morgan household signaled the beginning of what would later be dubbed the Whispering House case. The young couple had recently bought the Victorian-style home at a surprisingly low price, unaware of the dark shadow that loomed over the property. The real estate agent had simply mentioned some minor cosmetic issues, failing to disclose the house's disturbing history. Detective Sarah Klein, with her notebook in hand, rang the doorbell. A woman opened the door, her pregnant stomach protruding beneath her paint-stained overalls. Weariness clung to her, evident in the dark circles under her eyes. It was clear she had not slept well for days. The detective observed the tremble in the woman's hands as she recounted the chilling discovery of the message and the eerie handprints. The previous owners vanished suddenly, the woman recounted. Neighbors claim they left in the dead of night without a moving truck, only packing essentials into their car. Detective Klein traversed the aged floors of the historic home, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the corridors. Standing in the nursery, she examined the half-painted wall where the cryptic message still lingered beneath the abandoned paint job. Beside it, 5 small handprints marked the wet paint, positioned at a height suitable for an adult. Upon returning to the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property records. The house had changed owners 8 times in 30 years, an unusually high turnover rate. Disturbingly, child welfare reports had been filed for 3 of those families, detailing children hearing whispers from the walls and feeling like they were being watched as they slept. The detective delved deeper, unearthing construction records and historical documents. It was revealed that the house had once been owned by Eleanor Blackwood, a wealthy widow who ran a small orphanage on the premises during the early industrial era. Newspaper clippings referenced 5 children who had mysteriously disappeared from her care, believed to have run away. When Eleanor passed away, workers renovating the house stumbled upon a sealed room hidden behind the nursery wall. Inside, they discovered children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and clothing, but no trace of the children themselves. The case had gone cold, consigned to dusty archives. Detective Klein interviewed former residents, piecing together a disconcerting narrative. Each family with children had reported strange happenings, toys being moved overnight, echoes of childish laughter in empty hallways, and crayon drawings appearing on walls. Most dismissed these occurrences as mere figments of imagination until the ominous writings surfaced. The message varied slightly in each account. Don't let them find you. Don't make a sound. Don't let it hear you. The same handwriting appeared every time, always revealed during nursery repaintings. A forensic linguist compared the writing to samples from Eleanor Blackwood's journals. Even more chilling were the handprints, consistently identical in size and placement across generations, despite different children residing in the home. The investigation took a grim turn when the detective convinced the current owners to permit ground-penetrating radar scans in the basement. The technician identified anomalies in the readings, 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, each resembling a child's size. Breaking through the concrete, they unearthed the harrowing truth. 5 small sets of remains arranged in a circle. Forensic analysis confirmed that the children had perished during Eleanor's tenure in the house. Each child still wore a pendant engraved with their name, the 5 orphans who had supposedly fled. Luminol was sprayed throughout the nursery on Detective Klein's orders. In the darkness, handprints glowed on every wall, hidden beneath layers of paint, invisible to the naked eye. Countless handprints at various heights, as if the children had been trying to escape. Eleanor's journals, recovered from county archives, unveiled her twisted beliefs. She thought orphaned children possessed a unique spiritual energy. By confining them in the secret room, she believed she could tap into their life force to prolong her own existence. The children had etched their warnings into the wall with their nails and bits of metal, hoping that future occupants would uncover their fate. The case concluded with the proper burial of the 5 victims, their names finally acknowledged not as runaways but as victims of foul play. The house remained deserted thereafter, as the expectant couple refused to even retrieve their belongings. Detective Klein submitted her final report, enclosing images of the luminescent handprints and the hidden message beneath the paint. She noted that although justice had been served for the initial victims, an inexplicable presence persisted within that house, something that continued to reach out through layers of paint and time. The nursery walls were dismantled during the cleanup process, yet workers claimed to hear children's voices whispering from the rubble. None dared to return after their shift concluded. The house was eventually condemned, becoming another unsolved case filed away in a dusty cabinet, a physical resolution achieved, yet spiritual enigmas left unanswered. The detective retained one photograph from the investigation, 5 glowing handprints illuminated by luminol. In the darkness, an eerie reminder that certain crimes leave indelible marks that no amount of fresh paint can conceal. Story 13. The mysterious package that arrived at Sarah Miller's doorstep was shrouded in intrigue. No return label, no tracking number, just a weathered cardboard box, faintly damp from the morning dew. It wasn't intended for her, the name on it unfamiliar, yet curiosity tugged at her like a whisper in the night. Ignoring it seemed impossible. With a sense of apprehension mingled with fascination, she peeled away the tape, expecting mundane contents within. But what greeted her was far from ordinary, a lone VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing a cryptic message, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, its weight feeling oddly heavy, as if laden with secrets meant to remain hidden. Her fingertips traced the edges, the imperfections in the casing, as if seeking answers that lay beyond its surface. The handwritten note, marked by the urgency of its creator, added to the enigma that now enveloped her quiet suburban existence. As she stood in her kitchen, the tape casting a shadow of mystery, the world outside carried on its usual rhythm. The distant bark of a dog, the laughter of children playing, the hum of a lawnmower, all oblivious to the clandestine delivery that had just crossed her threshold. Sarah hesitated, her gaze shifting between the box and her ancient VCR, a relic of bygone days. Against her instincts, she slid the tape into the machine. Static crackled on the screen, gradually sharpening into focus to reveal a dimly lit room, a man seated in a wooden chair, his features obscured by shadows. His voice, steady yet tinged with urgency, introduced himself as Daniel Whitaker, a name that held no significance to Sarah until that moment. With each word spoken, the room came alive with his tale of innocence shrouded in suspicion. Daniel's voice carried the weight of a man burdened by unseen forces, his narrative painting a picture of a life upended by a crime he claimed he did not commit. The scene unfolded like a clandestine confession, revealing a truth at odds with the official narrative. Meanwhile, Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in a web of deceit and intrigue as she delved deeper into the case of Catherine Walsh's murder. The appearance of identical VHS tapes, each bearing Daniel's desperate plea, hinted at a conspiracy far more elaborate than a simple act of violence. The pieces of the puzzle refused to fit neatly together, leading Ramirez down a path fraught with shadows and half-truths. As the investigation unveiled layers of deception, Sarah received a second package, a collection of documents that laid bare a corporate scandal of epic proportions. The truth, once shrouded in darkness, now stood exposed in the harsh light of day. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, connecting dots that led to the heart of a malevolent plot. With each discovery, the veil of lies began to unravel, revealing a sinister scheme orchestrated by those in power. Daniel's innocence, once doubted, now stood as a beacon of truth amidst a sea of deception. The hunt for justice led to a reckoning that shook the foundations of a corrupt system, bringing to light the sins of the powerful and the resilience of the determined. In the end, as Sarah and Daniel stood face to face, the weight of their shared ordeal hung heavy in the air. The wrong address had led to the right hands, uncovering a truth that transcended boundaries of time and space. The echoes of their journey lingered, a reminder that sometimes the most profound revelations arrive in the guise of the unexpected, waiting to be embraced by those brave enough to seek them out. Story 14. The gentle current meandered lazily that morning, the water mirroring the tranquility of the sky above. The fisherman's attention was drawn to a peculiar sight, a lone suitcase floating near the edge of the shore. Initially dismissing it as discarded belongings, he hesitated, sensing an eerie aura emanating from it. Moving closer, the pungent odor assaulted his senses, unmistakably foul. The suitcase was bound by chains, its metal edges weathered and rusted. When authorities pried it open, they were met with a chilling discovery: not clothes, but strands of hair, fingers frozen in a haunting grip. Nestled at the bottom was a chilling note that sent shivers down their spines. This isn't the first. Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, her delicate handkerchief pressed against her nose to ward off the putrid smell. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s named Catherine Walsh, lay before her, her once vibrant features now dimmed by the waters that had claimed her. The meticulous work of the medical examiner captured every detail before the body was solemnly removed. What struck Mercer was not just the manner of disposal, but the unsettling care taken in presenting the victim manicured nails, recently styled hair, adorned in luxurious attire. As the investigation unfolded, Catherine Walsh's life revealed itself as a tapestry of ambition and privacy. A successful real estate agent known for her precision in selling high-end properties, she lived a solitary life in an affluent neighborhood. Her sudden disappearance, reported by her concerned assistant, raised alarm bells among her colleagues, who attested to her unwavering dedication to her work. Exploring Walsh's immaculate home, investigators unearthed a peculiar revelation. Everything was meticulously arranged, almost unnaturally perfect. However, a subtle anomaly in her home office hinted at a hidden truth, a journal tucked away in a partially open drawer. The final entry hinted at a lurking presence, observing her with unsettling persistence. Digging deeper into Walsh's digital footprint, a pattern emerged: a series of cryptic messages from unknown senders, all echoing the same unsettling phrase, "I see your perfection." Mercer pieced together the puzzle, linking these messages to the elaborate display of the victim's body and the meticulous care taken in her presentation. A crucial breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: a pawnshop owner who identified Walsh's missing emerald necklace. The trail led to Michael Linden, a seemingly unassuming maintenance worker with a chilling penchant for meticulous observation. Surveillance footage painted a disturbing picture of Linden's clandestine visits to Walsh's building, his actions meticulously planned to coincide with her absences. Inside Linden's unassuming apartment, a macabre collection of photos adorned the walls: images of Walsh and other women, each bearing a striking resemblance to the deceased real estate agent. Some faces were ominously marked with red excess, hinting at a twisted obsession. A hidden compartment revealed a shrine dedicated to each victim, a shrine of personal items meticulously gathered to recreate their essence. In the stark confines of the interrogation room, Linden's facade of normalcy cracked under the weight of evidence. His chilling confession unveiled a disturbing truth he sought to correct: what he deemed as imperfections in his victims, meticulously grooming them before their untimely demise. As the trial unfolded, the families of the victims found closure in Linden's life sentence, devoid of any chance for parole. For Detective Mercer, the case marked a somber closure, yet lingering questions haunted her. What drove Linden's fixation on these particular women? What inner flaw was he attempting to expunge through his gruesome acts? As the river's currents carried on their timeless course, A sense of unease lingered in the precinct, where chilling reminders of darkness hidden in plain sight adorned Mercer's desk, a stark testament to the enigmatic depths of human nature, where perfection and imperfection intertwined in a haunting dance. Story 15, the apartment lay silent and abandoned, its previous inhabitants long gone. When the new tenants stepped into the dusty space, their expectations were low, perhaps some neglected remnants of the past awaited them. Yet one door resisted all attempts to open it, a closet locked tight from within. With a forceful push, the landlord broke the barrier, revealing a sight that sent shivers down their spines. The walls bore deep, jagged scratches etched into the wood with a desperate urgency. And nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone, its screen still illuminated by an unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the grim realities of her profession, felt a chill crawl up her spine at the scene before her. It wasn't the presence of blood or violence that unsettled her, but the haunting implication of those frantic marks, a soul trapped in a struggle for freedom. Forensics now, she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured the eerie scratches on camera. And fetch me the records of the previous tenant. The message on the phone ominously declared, "I know what you did." The landlord, a jittery man with perpetually clammy hands, revealed that the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unpaid rent. A quiet young woman kept to herself, left about 6 months ago, he murmured, avoiding the gaze of the closet. No trouble at all. Forensics unveiled a grim truth within the scratches, traces of blood, most belonging to a single individual, presumably Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman reported missing after disappearing from her daily routine. Yet 2 other DNA profiles emerged. One remained unidentified, while the other belonged to a man supposedly deceased for 2 years. "This doesn't make sense," Shaw muttered, studying the perplexing lab results. Derek Mercer, presumed dead in a tragic accident, now left his genetic imprint on the closet walls. Emma's apartment whispered of an interrupted existence, neglected mail, a forgotten coffee mug, a neatly made bed. Her phone records hinted at a sudden silence in her life, with a flurry of calls from an unknown number leading up to her disappearance. Emma mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name, just intense and private. Surveillance footage captured a shadowy figure in a baseball cap trailing Emma into her building one fateful night, an enigmatic presence concealed from the camera's scrutiny. The puzzle unraveled as partial fingerprints matching Derek Mercer were discovered on the closet's interior doorknob. He staged his own death, Shaw concluded. But why, and what was his tie to Emma? The unidentified DNA sample unveiled another missing person's tale, Lynette Porter, vanishing 3 years prior. Shaw connected the dots through meticulous investigation, tracing Derek's shadowy presence to Emma's life. A haunting pattern emerged as Derek's mother's car frequented Emma's neighborhood, aligning with his physical description. The hunt led them to a remote property owned by the Mercer family, where Lynette Porter was discovered alive but a mere shadow of her former self, imprisoned in conditions mirroring Emma's confinement. "He forced me to witness," Lynette murmured, her eyes vacant with trauma. "Said I needed to learn the fate of those who seek to escape." Incriminating evidence surfaced, journals detailing Mercer's fixation on dominance, images of women resembling Emma and Lynette, and damning videos of his cruel deeds. "No one exposes my secrets," his voice echoed in the chilling recordings. The search for Derek Mercer spanned jurisdictions, uncovering a chilling revelation from forensic psychologists, a man driven not by mere murder, but by a twisted desire to inflict suffering in claustrophobic realms. Captured at a bus terminal with a new identity and a sinister arsenal in his possession, Mercer clung to a disturbing calmness during interrogation. "She sent that message herself," he dismissed the phone's eerie text. She craved discovery, but not rescue. The trial unraveled the intricate web of deceit Mercer had spun to evade justice, crafting a new existence under a false identity, preying on women resembling his initial victim. Emma's fate remained a haunting mystery, as forensic clues hinted at her tragic demise within the suffocating confines of the closet. The jury swiftly convicted Mercer on all charges, delivering a life sentence devoid of parole. At his sentencing, Lynette Porter faced her captor with unwavering resolve. He imprisoned us in darkness because his own mind knows no light, but as he withers away, I shall bask in the sun. The case reshaped missing persons protocols, emphasizing relationship dynamics and property investigations. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment as a somber reminder, a testament to the harrowing struggle for survival etched in those desperate marks. Story 16. Arrived in the mail, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. A single brass key worn with time. The homeowner didn't recognize it, but something about it felt familiar. When she slid it into every lock she owned, nothing turned. It wasn't hers. But when she placed it on the coffee table, the old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a single, hollow chime despite having been broken for years. Sarah Miller reported the strange occurrence to authorities after finding the mysterious key. What seemed like an odd mishap soon unraveled into one of the most disturbing criminal investigations the quiet suburban neighborhood had ever witnessed. The responding officer initially dismissed her concerns. A key in the mail, perhaps a mistake, he suggested, but Sarah insisted something felt wrong. The officer reluctantly took the key as evidence, mostly to appease her, placing it in a small evidence bag that would later become central to a sprawling investigation. Detective Robert Harmon received the case file during the morning briefing. A veteran investigator with the Special Victims Unit, he had developed an intuition for cases that would evolve beyond their seemingly innocuous beginnings. The brass key sat on his desk, unremarkable yet somehow unsettling. Background checks revealed Sarah had no criminal history. A retired high school English teacher, widowed, with 2 adult children living across the country. Nothing suspicious in her financial records, phone logs, or social media. She appeared to be exactly what she claimed, an innocent recipient of something strange. The forensic team found no fingerprints on the key besides Sarah's. The envelope yielded nothing except a generic postmark from the regional distribution center. No DNA, no trace evidence. The key itself was a standard Schlage, available at any hardware store, though well worn and at least several years old. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique bidding pattern through the department database. A cold case from 7 years prior had documented an identical key pattern belonging to a storage unit where investigators had found blood-stained carpet, cutting tools, and photographs of unidentified women. The original investigation had stalled without sufficient evidence to identify a suspect. Harmon pulled the dusty case files. The detective who had worked the case had since retired. The storage unit had been rented under a false identity, paid in cash. Surveillance footage had long been overwritten. The evidence collected had yielded partial DNA samples, but no matches in any criminal database. The photographs recovered from the storage unit showed 5 different women, all appearing unconscious. Only 3 had been identified during the original investigation, all reported missing but never found. Their cases remained open, classified as suspected homicides without bodies. Sarah Miller recognized none of the women when shown the photographs. She grew increasingly anxious as the investigation proceeded, installing new locks and a security system in her home. The question lingered, why had someone sent her this key? Harmon ordered a fresh analysis of the original evidence using newer techniques. The partial DNA sample was expanded and run through genealogical databases. This yielded a distant familial match, a second cousin twice removed from the suspect. Working backward through family trees, investigators narrowed their focus to Harold Jenkins, who had lived 2 streets away from Sarah Miller until moving away approximately 6 years ago. His current whereabouts were unknown. Further investigation revealed Jenkins had been a substitute teacher at the same school where Sarah taught, though they had minimal documented interaction. His employment records showed scattered work history, long unexplained gaps, and frequent relocations. His former residence yielded nothing unusual upon inspection. Neighbors described him as quiet, unremarkable, someone who kept to himself, the common refrain that often follows revelations about predators hiding in plain sight. The big question remained unanswered: why send the key now? Why to Sarah Miller? Harmon theorized it might be a trophy, a warning, or perhaps a macabre invitation. The search for Jenkins intensified. His driver's license hadn't been renewed, no credit card activity, no tax returns. The digital breadcrumbs people typically leave behind were conspicuously absent, suggesting an intentional effort to remain untraceable. The true horror of the case emerged when authorities investigated a small cabin registered to Jenkins' deceased mother. Beneath the weathered wooden floorboards, investigators discovered a concealed room accessible only through a trapdoor. Inside, meticulously organized shelves held dozens of identical brass keys, each with a name and date engraved on a small attached tag. 5 keys corresponded to the women from the photographs. The remaining keys, 27 in total, presented a horrifying implication of additional victims previously unknown to authorities. Buried behind the cabin, forensic teams recovered human remains. The excavation continued for weeks as investigators unearthed multiple bodies in varying states of decomposition. Sarah received round-the-clock protection as the manhunt for Jenkins expanded nationwide. Behavioral analysts suggested the key represented a twisted invitation, Jenkins selecting Sarah as someone to appreciate his work. The press dubbed him the Keymaster, a name that spread rapidly across national headlines. Fear permeated the community as residents questioned how such horror had existed among them undetected. Detection dogs tracked a scent from the cabin into the surrounding wilderness. Search teams combed dense forest areas. Thermal imaging drones scanned terrain too dangerous for ground teams. The manhunt became one of the largest in regional history. A wildlife photographer hiking in remote woods captured an image of someone matching Jenkins' description. The grainy photograph showed a bearded man with hollow eyes carrying a backpack, heading deeper into the wilderness. Authorities closed in on the area, establishing a perimeter. Tactical teams navigated difficult terrain while psychological profilers predicted Jenkins would not surrender. They anticipated he might have prepared for this contingency with hidden supplies and escape routes. The final confrontation occurred when a patrol officer encountered Jenkins attempting to cross a river. Rather than surrender, Jenkins retreated to higher ground, where he barricaded himself in an abandoned fire observation tower. Negotiators attempted communication for hours without response. When tactical teams finally breached the tower, they found Jenkins dead from a self-inflicted wound. Beside his body lay a journal containing detailed accounts of his crimes, alongside a single brass key identical to the one Sarah had received. Inside a waterproof container, investigators discovered additional evidence, including photographs, maps marking burial locations, and personal effects taken from victims, a methodically preserved record of atrocities spanning nearly a decade. The journal's final entry addressed Sarah directly. "You never noticed me, but I noticed everything about you." The key opens nothing because what I wanted to give you cannot be unlocked with metal, only with recognition. Now everyone will remember my name." The subsequent investigation identified 32 victims in total. Families who had spent years wondering about missing loved ones finally received answers, though the closure came with the unbearable weight of confirmed tragedy. Sarah never returned to her home, unable to reconcile the horror that had brushed so close to her ordinary life. The grandfather clock that had mysteriously chimed was examined and found to contain a small wireless receiver. Jenkins had been watching, waiting for the moment she received his gift. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of predatory behavior hiding beneath a veneer of normalcy. Psychological researchers continue studying Jenkins' writings, seeking insights to identify similar offenders before they act. And somewhere in an evidence locker, a collection of brass keys sits in silent testimony to lives cut short, each key opening nothing, yet unlocking a devastating truth about the darkness that sometimes hides behind unremarkable facades. Story 17. In the heart of the city stood a quaint coffee shop that held more secrets than anyone could fathom. For years, a mysterious man had made this place his sanctuary, a silent observer amidst the bustling crowd. His presence was as constant as the morning sun, his routine unchanging like the ebb and flow of the tides. The barista, a familiar face in a sea of strangers, recognized him each day, yet his name remained a mystery to all. Then, one fateful day, the man failed to appear. Concerned, the authorities were called, and what they discovered would plunge them into a perplexing enigma. Left behind on his customary seat was a forgotten wallet, a lone artifact revealing nothing but a haunting absence of identity. A driver's license with a face but no name, no address, just a void where his essence should have resided. The enigma deepened as security footage unveiled an impossibility that defied reason. Detective Sarah Mercer, a woman of keen intellect and unwavering resolve, delved into the perplexing case of the man now known only as John Doe. The footage, a silent witness to his vanishing act, revealed a man of ordinary appearance, unassuming, blending seamlessly into the tapestry of the coffee shop. With each playback, the mystery only grew. John entered, he sat, he vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of bewilderment in his wake. As Mercer scrutinized the footage, a chilling realization dawned: the man had simply ceased to exist within the confines of that cozy haven. Desperate for answers, Mercer embarked on a labyrinthine journey that would challenge her perception of reality itself. The wallet, a cryptic puzzle of blank spaces and enigmatic numbers, held no clues to the man's enigmatic identity. A single business card, a phantom link to an elusive phone number, offered no solace. The barista, a witness to the man's silent presence, offered scant revelations: his quiet demeanor, his solitary musings, his mysterious notebook filled with arcane symbols. The notebook, a repository of enigmatic scribbles and cryptic diagrams, confounded even the most seasoned code breakers. As Mercer delved deeper, she unearthed a trail of anomalies that defied comprehension. The security footage, a flickering beacon of uncertainty, hinted at hidden truths beyond the veil of normalcy. A mirror, an ancient relic cloaked in mystery, beckoned with its distorted reflections and arcane symbols. Behind the mirror, a hidden chamber revealed a trove of secrets, a cache of identical wallets, each a vessel of the man's enigmatic existence. A journal, a chronicle of temporal experiments and metaphysical conundrums, whispered of realms beyond human ken. The investigation took a sinister turn as reality itself seemed to warp and fracture around the coffee shop. Reflections moved of their own accord. Phantom sightings of the enigmatic John Doe haunted the unsuspecting patrons, all while Mercer teetered on the brink of a revelation that defied logic. A chance encounter with an enigmatic physicist, Margaret Keller, unlocked the final pieces of the puzzle. The man, once known as Daniel Weston, a prodigious mind lost to the annals of time, had delved into the mysteries of quantum mirrors and parallel realities. As Mercer pieced together the fragments of Weston's enigmatic legacy, a chilling truth emerged. The coffee shop, a nexus of converging realities, stood atop the very laboratory where Weston's experiment had unraveled. The mirror, shattered and silent, bore witness to a final act of transcendence. And so the tale of the man who didn't exist faded into legend, a haunting enigma that lingered in the memories of those who dared to tread the boundaries of the unknown. Detective Mercer, a seeker of truths beyond the veil, vanished into the shadows, leaving behind whispers of a reality forever changed by the man who slipped through the cracks of time. Story 18. In the quiet solitude of an old attic, buried beneath layers of forgotten memories and dusty relics, lay an ancient box. It had weathered the passage of time, holding within its worn confines a collection of Polaroids, relics of moments long gone. Among the faded images of birthdays and family gatherings, there was one that stood out, a photograph that whispered of secrets untold. As Rebecca unearthed the last photo from the depths of the box, a shiver ran down her spine. In the image, a family sat in her living room, their smiles frozen in time, but they were not her family, and in the shadows behind them stood a figure, a man watching with unseen eyes. The air grew heavy with unspoken questions as Rebecca gazed at the eerie scene captured on film. Descending the creaking stairs, Rebecca brought the unsettling photograph to the harsh light of her kitchen. The familiarity of her surroundings juxtaposed with the strangeness of the family in the picture sent a chill down her spine. Detective Morgan arrived, a silent observer with eyes that saw beyond the surface, delving into the mystery that encased the photograph. Through quiet investigations and meticulous inquiries, a pattern emerged, a pattern of families who had come and gone from the house, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. The Sutherlands, the Crawfords, the Mornos all had vanished into thin air, leaving behind no trace of their lives. Forensic analysis shed light on the chilling truth. The Polaroid had been taken with intent, capturing not just the family, but also the shadowy figure that lurked in the background. And as the layers of the past were peeled back, a dark history emerged, intertwined with the very foundation of the house itself. Beneath the cold concrete of the basement, a grim discovery awaited, an eerie tableau of preserved families, trapped in a timeless limbo. Among them, the Sutherlands, their faces frozen in eternal smiles, unaware of the watcher in the shadows. As the investigation unfolded, a hidden crawlspace in the attic revealed a chilling truth, a journal filled with chilling observations, a testament to a presence that lingered unseen, watching, waiting. Rebecca, now a mere pawn in a deadly game, found herself ensnared in a web of mystery and danger. The house, now a silent witness to unspeakable horrors, stood shrouded in darkness, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. Samuel Whitfield, a spectral figure from history, loomed large in the shadows, his legacy a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within. As night fell, the silence of the house was shattered by the mechanical whir of a Polaroid camera, capturing moments unseen, secrets untold. And in the stillness of the night, new families, new homes, new watchers emerged, their presence a chilling reminder of the enduring mystery that lay hidden within the walls of the house. And so the truth remained elusive, a phantom that danced on the edges of perception, leaving only questions in its wake. The man in the photograph, Samuel Whitfield, a ghost of the past, continued to elude capture, his legacy a chilling reminder of the darkness that dwelled within the heart of the house. As the investigation continued, the truth remained veiled in shadows, a mystery that defied explanation. And in the darkness, unseen eyes watched, waiting for the next chapter to unfold, a tale of darkness and deception that lingered on, whispering of secrets yet untold. Story 19. In the quiet hush of the night, there was a tale that unfolded like a whispered secret, lulling you into a mysterious slumber. It began in a house where shadows danced along the walls and secrets lingered in the corners, waiting to be unveiled. Rebecca Morgan found herself drawn to the attic, a place she had always avoided. But fate had other plans as a storm sent raindrops trickling through a leak in the roof, leading her to confront the forgotten realm above. The attic greeted her with a haunting stillness, filled with relics of the past cloaked in layers of dust and cobwebs. Amidst the darkness, a dollhouse stood sentinel in the farthest corner, its miniature furnishings arranged with eerie precision. As Rebecca peered inside, a shiver ran down her spine. The tiny figures within were not mere dolls, but intricate replicas of her own family, each one a mirror image of reality. But one figure stood apart, the one meant to be her, standing by the attic door, watching. Her fingers traced the rooftop of the dollhouse, feeling the imprint left by the miniature version of herself. A chill swept through her, unrelated to the cold draft that whispered through the rafters. This dollhouse did not belong here, in this unfamiliar rental property that should hold no memories of her childhood. The discovery set off a chain of events that would unravel a chilling mystery. Rebecca's call to law enforcement brought officers to the suburban residence, where a family in turmoil refused to return to the upper floors, gripped by fear and uncertainty. Detective Sarah Harmon took charge, initially brushing off the family's concerns as a prank or mere imagination running wild in a new environment. But the details of the dollhouse painted a different picture, each figurine capturing a unique essence of the family members with unsettling accuracy. Forensic analysis revealed fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match those of the family, leading to a startling revelation. Microscopic cameras hidden within the miniature figures had been recording the family's every move, capturing their lives in intricate detail. The investigation took a darker turn as a hidden basement entrance was discovered, revealing a secret living space beneath the house. Clues pointed to an intruder who had been silently observing the family, living undetected beneath their feet. The puzzle deepened with the absence of forced entry, raising questions about the previous occupants. The trail led to Martin Wells, the son of the former homeowners, whose elaborate scheme unraveled with each piece of evidence unearthed. Digital forensics unveiled a web of surveillance that led to Wells' apartment, a place adorned with photographs and journals detailing the lives of multiple families. Each dollhouse represented a different household, a twisted manifestation of control and possession. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed, his delusions of ownership laid bare. His fixation on the dollhouses stemmed from a need to reclaim what he had lost, turning families into mere puppets in his elaborate game of control. The court proceedings exposed the extent of Wells' violations, condemning his actions as a breach of not just privacy, but the very essence of autonomy and safety. The Morgans, scarred by the ordeal, found solace in a new beginning far from the shadows of the past. Yet the echoes of that night lingered in Rebecca's mind, a reminder that the line between reality and illusion is fragile. She removed all traces of miniature replicas from their new home, but a lingering unease remained, a whisper of uncertainty that danced in the shadows. As the night enveloped the house once more, a sense of peace settled over the darkness, carrying with it the weight of a story untold but never forgotten. And somewhere in the quiet expanse of the night, a tiny figure stood, watching, waiting to be discovered in the depths of dreams. Story 20, the old library stood on the brink of destruction, its fate sealed by the relentless march of progress. Workers toiled diligently, dismantling its walls one brick at a time, oblivious to the secrets hidden within its ancient confines. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As the final stages of demolition drew near, a chance discovery sent ripples of unease through the crew. A worker's stumble, a hidden latch, and with a soft click, a revelation unfolded. A hidden passage concealed behind a nondescript bookshelf beckoned with whispered promises of forgotten tales. The narrow corridor led to a chamber frozen in time, its air thick with the weight of years gone by. Within this clandestine space, devoid of life yet brimming with a silent presence, a solitary chair stood as a sentinel, its metal legs firmly bolted to the floor. And etched upon the walls, a haunting refrain echoed in the dim light, "I am still here." The construction foreman, sensing an ominous undercurrent, called upon the authorities. What began as a routine job now bore the markings of a mystery steeped in shadows. Detective Morgan Walsh, weathered by 2 decades of service, stepped into the hidden room, his flashlight piercing the darkness like a beacon of truth in the night. "Secure the scene," Walsh commanded, his voice a solemn echo in the chamber's confines. "Let no hand disturb the silence until the forensics team arrives." The library's past unfurled like a tapestry of intrigue before the detective's eyes. Once owned by the Harrington family, pillars of the community, the building had passed into public hands following the enigmatic disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanished without a trace during her college years, leaving behind only echoes of a life interrupted, Rebecca's absence had cast a long shadow over the family's legacy. As forensic experts combed through the hidden room, a macabre puzzle began to take shape. Strands of hair, fibers entwined in the chair's grooves, and the wall's cryptic markings all whispered of a tale untold, a tragedy veiled in secrecy. The chair itself, a macabre relic of restraint, bore witness to a struggle against invisible bonds. Walsh delved into the Harringtons' history, seeking threads of connection in the tapestry of silence. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's disappearance hinted at a darker narrative, a web of deceit woven with meticulous care. And as the investigation deepened, tendrils of suspicion coiled around a single figure, Maxwell Harrington, the family's enigmatic patriarch. Accounts of Maxwell's solitary vigils in the library's forbidden section, the contractor's peculiar allegiance, and the hushed whispers of former staff painted a portrait of shadows dancing just beyond the light's reach. And when DNA evidence linked Rebecca to the hidden room, the truth emerged from its slumber like a specter summoned from the depths of memory. Maxwell's veneer of innocence cracked under the weight of irrefutable proof. In a cold confession, he laid bare the horrors buried beneath the floorboards of secrets. Rebecca's fate, a tragic dance of betrayal and despair, unfolded in chilling detail as Maxwell's words etched scars upon the air. Justice, though delayed, found its mark. Beneath the library's hallowed ground, Rebecca's remains lay in silent repose, a testament to a life cut short by treachery. The Harringtons, faces etched with grief and remorse, bore witness to the reckoning long overdue. And as the dust settled on the ruins of the old library, a somber peace descended upon its forsaken halls. Flowers adorned its doorstep, a tribute to a lost soul reclaimed from the shadows. In the end, it was Rebecca's voice, a whisper from beyond the veil that echoed through the ages, ensuring that her story would never fade into obscurity. Story 21, The Enigmatic House at the Edge of the Woods. The small town held its secrets close, whispering tales of the house nestled at the edge of the dense woods. Hidden from casual view, it stood silent and solitary, its windows darkened, its ancient porch bearing the weight of forgotten years. No one laid claim to the house, no one could recall its origins. It simply existed on the fringes of collective memory, a mystery left untouched. One fateful day, a group of adventurous hikers strayed too near the elusive house and stumbled upon an unsettling sight. Names were carved into the weathered wooden siding, etched deeply as if to serve as ominous warnings. Among the list of names, one stood out fresh and untouched by time, a name unfamiliar to all but one of the hikers. A shiver ran through the group as a voice quivered, "That's mine." Under the veil of night, a call reached the dispatch, catalogued as a routine trespassing incident. The voice belonged to Mason Wright, the trailblazer who had discovered his own name etched into the enigmatic house. Responding officers anticipated a simple case of mischief, a prank among youths. What awaited them, however, defied all rational explanation. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as darkness draped the forest in its cloak. Her flashlight pierced the shadows, casting an eerie glow on the worn facade of the abandoned dwelling. The vertical cascade of names, 27 in total, adorned the eastern wall. Some names faded with age, blending into the weathered wood, while others remained sharp as if freshly carved. At the bottom stood Mason Wright, the incision still redolent of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason asserted, his breath materializing in the frigid air. "I cannot fathom how my name came to be known." Thus began the inquiry, with each name on the wall subjected to thorough scrutiny. The findings sent a chill through the investigative team. Each name corresponded to an individual reported missing over the past 40 years, vanished while hiking alone. Some cases had grown cold, others remained open, but all shared a harrowing similarity: the hikers had disappeared without a trace. Forensic experts meticulously documented the carvings, noting the variations in depth, technique, and weathering. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, tied to a missing person case from nearly 4 decades ago, told a tale of a young woman who ventured into the woods and never returned, leaving behind only a lone hiking boot by a stream. Interviews with Mason yielded no connections to the haunting names, his innocence in the mystery seemingly genuine. Attention shifted to his companions, particularly Emily Chen, the group's photographer. Upon scrutinizing the images she captured during their trek, analysts discerned a disquieting presence: a blurred figure, tall and slender, lurking in the background of 3 distinct photographs. Emily maintained they had been alone on the trail, vehement in her denial of encountering any other soul. Detective Keller authorized a thorough search of the abandoned house's interior. While the upper levels lay in disrepair, the basement harbored a grim revelation. Personal effects of the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each item labeled with a name from the exterior wall. Evidence of bloodstains, futilely scrubbed from the concrete floor, hinted at untold horrors. As the investigation delved deeper, Mason Wright's demeanor grew increasingly unsettled. He reported eerie incidents, whispers in the night, enigmatic footprints leading to his door but vanishing on the return journey, shadowy figures observing from afar. Assigned protection offered little solace as Mason succumbed to paranoia, his world unraveling in fear. A breakthrough emerged with the unearthing of land records hidden in county archives, revealing the house's former owner Victor Blackwood, a reclusive hunter who had vanished without a trace years prior. Descriptions portrayed him as an aloof, towering figure shunning society. A search warrant expanded the investigation into the surrounding forest, unveiling a network of primitive hunting blinds strategically placed along frequented paths. Among Blackwood's possessions, a journal chronicled chilling observations of hikers, their routines, and his perverse methods of tracking them. A manhunt ensued for Blackwood, deploying resources across jurisdictions in a bid to capture the elusive predator. Yet the hunter remained elusive, evading every net cast to ensnare him. Mason Wright's abrupt disappearance deepened the mystery, his apartment deserted, save for a haunting message carved on the bedroom wall. The search for Mason persisted, met with a grim discovery during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's abode. Concealed behind a false panel in the basement, a macabre workshop lay hidden, adorned with woodworking tools, preserving agents, and a freshly carved wooden slab bearing a new name, the lead forensic technician from the initial investigation. In a desperate bid to ensnare the enigmatic predator, authorities erected a vigilant perimeter around the house, each approach meticulously recorded and monitored. 3 nights of tense anticipation culminated in an alert triggered by motion sensors. Surveillance footage captured a spectral figure emerging from the shadows, impossibly tall, unnaturally slender, advancing towards the house with an otherworldly grace. As tactical units closed in, the cameras momentarily faltered, only to restore as swiftly as they had failed. The figure had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an eerie silence that echoed through the forest. Today, the enigmatic house remains under unyielding surveillance, a silent sentinel guarding its secrets. Mason Wright and the forensic technician slipped into the shadows, their fates entwined with the mysteries of the house at the edge of the woods. The investigation endures, drawing upon new resources as similar disappearances haunt other wooded realms. The names etched on the wall have become a whispered legend among law enforcement, a dark reminder of the unfathomable depths hidden within the forest's embrace, names unspoken, names forgotten. Story 22. As the new homeowners settled into their Victorian manor, they brushed off the crackling of the old intercom system as a quirky relic of the past. Late at night, the static would dance through the halls like a ghostly echo, a reminder of a time long forgotten. One evening, curiosity got the best of the husband, and he pressed the button, unleashing a whispered question into the darkness. "Why did you come back?" His hands trembled as he recoiled, his wife's denial adding to the mystery that now enveloped them. The manor, with its ancient oak trees and weathered facade, held secrets within its walls, secrets that stirred restlessly in the silence of the night. Daniel and Meredith Parker, enamored with history, had found themselves drawn to this place, unaware of the shadows that lurked beneath the surface. When Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the property in response to a call about a possible break-in, she sensed a tension in the air, a heaviness that clung to the grandeur of the home. Daniel led Detective Reeves through the maze of rooms, recounting how the whispers had escalated from mere static to coherent sentences, unsettling both him and his wife. In the living room, Meredith sat rigid, her gaze fixed on a steaming mug, her voice cutting through the air with a revelation about a hidden journal found during a renovation project. The journal belonging to a woman named Alina unveiled a tale of suspicion and fear, hinting at a darker truth that had long been buried within the walls of the manor. The entries painted a picture of a woman trapped in a web of deceit spun by her own husband, Vincent Blackwood, whose actions had tragic consequences that echoed through the years. As Detective Reeves delved deeper into the history of the house, she uncovered the chilling fate of Alina Blackwood, whose remains were discovered beneath the garden shed, a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded decades ago. Vincent's carefully orchestrated facade crumbled under the weight of the evidence, revealing a man consumed by a desire for silence at any cost. Vincent's confession sent shivers down the detective's spine, his calm demeanor belying the darkness that lurked within. The truth of Alina's fate emerged like a specter from the past, demanding justice that had been denied for too long. The house, with its whispers and echoes, had finally found a way to speak the truth that had been silenced for so many years. The trial was swift, the verdict clear. Vincent Blackwood was sentenced for his crimes, his legacy tarnished by the memory of the woman he had silenced. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's history, bid farewell to the manor, leaving behind a garden now graced by a solemn memorial for Alina. As the years passed, the house changed hands, each new owner unaware of the secrets that lingered in the shadows. The intercom system, once a source of mystery, was removed during renovations, its whispers fading into the echoes of the past. Detective Reeves, in her quiet moments, would drive by the property, the wind carrying faint echoes of a story long told but never forgotten. Story 23. The wooden plank shifted beneath her weight, a subtle movement that drew her attention. Kneeling down, she traced the edges of the loosened board with delicate fingers, sensing a hidden void beneath the seemingly solid surface. With cautious determination, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow space concealed beneath the foundation of her new home. In the dim light, she discerned a mattress, a chair, and a weathered notebook nestled in the shadows. The pages of the notebook bore a haunting repetition of a single name, her own. Detective Morgan Reed observed silently as Sarah Coleman peered into the abyss beneath her quaint abode, her expression a mix of fear and disbelief. It was more than just a hidden room. It was an intrusion into her newfound sanctuary, a violation of her sense of security. "Please don't disturb anything else." Detective Reed's voice resonated with calm authority as she illuminated the space with a steady beam of light. The walls were adorned with surveillance photographs, capturing intimate moments of Sarah's daily life, evidence of a meticulous obsession that had remained hidden until now. Sarah had acquired the cottage from the estate of Walter Green, an elderly recluse with no known heirs. The property had sat empty for months before she stumbled upon the unsettling discovery. The real estate listing had painted a picture of charm and potential, omitting any hint of the sinister secrets lurking beneath its floorboards. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "The neighbors said he kept to himself. I was told the basement access was sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report indicated." As crime scene investigators arrived, the truth began to unfold. Fingerprints, photographs, and a timeline emerged, revealing Walter's relentless surveillance of Sarah for years before his demise. He had shadowed her every move, blending into the backdrop of her life unnoticed. "The level of fixation suggests escalation," the department psychologist explained somberly. "The hidden room implies a progression towards a more direct confrontation." Detective Reed's inquiry took a chilling turn when she spoke to Walter's former colleague, who nervously admitted to the deceased man's fixation on Sarah. A key found in Walter's workplace locker led to a storage unit containing replicas of Sarah's belongings, an eerie imitation of her former life, meticulously crafted by a disturbed mind. Walter's troubled past of delusional infatuation resurfaced, shedding light on his dark obsessions. His death had thwarted a plan to merge their lives in a twisted fantasy of togetherness. Sarah's world had been infiltrated by a ghostly presence fixated on a love that existed only in his fractured mind. Haunted by the proximity of danger, Sarah made the decision to leave the house, severing ties with the specter of Walter's obsession. Detective Reed watched over her from afar, a silent guardian against the shadows of a past that refused to fade. The cottage found new occupants, unaware of the secrets hidden beneath its floorboards. The hidden room was sealed, the echoes of its dark history buried beneath layers of fresh paint and new beginnings. Life carried on, but for those who knew the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor remained a cautionary reminder of the unseen perils that linger in the shadows, of monsters who vanish before they can be unmasked, and of survivors who narrowly escape their own harrowing fates. Story 24. The tale of the Victorian-era home unfolded like a delicate dance of shadows and whispers, captivating the new tenants, Michael and Sarah Klein. What began as a simple endeavor to peel away peeling wallpaper soon unraveled into a mysterious narrative that transcended time itself. As the layers of wallpaper surrendered to their gentle touch, a hidden story emerged, written in ink that bore the weight of secrets long forgotten. A name, repeated endlessly, Alina Winters, etched into the very fabric of the walls, each letter a testament to a past shrouded in darkness. Intrigued by the enigma before them, Michael and Sarah delved into the depths of history, seeking answers that seemed to elude the confines of reality. The name they uncovered bore no connection to the house's previous inhabitants, leading them down a rabbit hole of intrigue and uncertainty. A single search online unveiled a haunting truth, a missing persons case from a bygone era. A woman named Alina Winters, who shared an uncanny resemblance to the enigmatic seller of the house, Margaret Cavendish. The walls of their newfound home whispered tales of long-forgotten memories, each layer peeled away, revealing a fragment of a story that defied logic and reason. Sarah's fingers traced the name of Alina Winters, her touch a delicate dance across the inked letters that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Their nights became consumed by a relentless quest for truth, unraveling the threads of a mystery that spanned decades. As the renovation of the house came to a standstill, their hearts and minds became entwined in a web of intrigue that threatened to consume them whole. With each revelation, the lines between past and present blurred, drawing them deeper into a realm where reality intertwined with the echoes of a forgotten past. Alina Winters' disappearance became a haunting specter that loomed over their every waking moment, a ghostly presence that refused to be silenced. The discovery of hidden identities beneath the floorboards only deepened the mystery, revealing a tangled web of deceit and betrayal that spanned generations. Alina Winters and Margaret Cavendish became intertwined in a tragic tale of loss and longing, their fates forever bound by a shared history of darkness. As the investigation unfolded, the truth revealed itself in fragments, each piece a puzzle that slowly coalesced into a chilling realization. The name on the wall, once a symbol of mystery, now stood as a testament to the fractured mind of a woman lost to the shadows of her own creation. Forensic teams unearthed the remains of Alina Winters from beneath the earth, bringing closure to a case long thought forgotten. The walls of the house bore witness to a truth that transcended time, a tale of love and betrayal that echoed through the ages. And as the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Michael and Sarah stood on the threshold of a new dawn, their home forever transformed by the whispers of a past that refused to be forgotten. In the quiet of the night, as the shadows danced across the walls, they found solace in the knowledge that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved, their secrets buried deep within the confines of memory and time. Story 25. The old house had sat untouched for years, a silent witness to the mystery that lingered within its walls. Whispers from the neighbors told of the young woman who vanished, leaving behind an enigma that refused to fade. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, a sense of unease hung in the air, thick with the weight of time. The bedroom, sealed off from the world, held its secrets close. With a creak and a groan, they forced their way in, only to find a scene frozen in time. The room was a snapshot of a life interrupted, a bed neatly made, a mirror reflecting emptiness, a candle extinguished, its wax a hardened pool of forgotten dreams. And there on the desk lay a notebook, its pages whispering of the past. Detective Morgan traced the words penned by a ghost from the past Elise Winters, a name tinged with sorrow and unanswered questions. Each stroke of her handwriting told a story of fear and defiance, leading to that fateful night when she vanished into the shadows. As the room was combed for traces of the truth, the detective uncovered a tale of greed and deceit woven into the fabric of Elise's life. A paralegal entangled in a web of corporate lies, she had dared to challenge the powerful, only to disappear without a trace. The room bore no scars of violence, no crimson stains to mark her passing. It held only the lingering scent of dust and a hint of something more sinister. The investigation unearthed a hidden trove, a key, a flash drive, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to a truth too dark to ignore. Elise's crusade against corruption echoed in the shadows, her voice rising from the depths of silence to accuse those who sought to silence her. The digital whispers revealed a conspiracy that reached deep into the heart of power, exposing the rot that festered beneath the surface. Through the tangled web of deceit, the detective followed the trail of breadcrumbs to a revelation that shook the foundations of the powerful elite. The truth, long buried beneath layers of deception, emerged into the harsh light of justice. Vincent Harriman, a man draped in shadows, stood accused of crimes that stained his hands with blood and betrayal. The locked room, a chamber of secrets, held the key to Elise's legacy, a legacy of courage and sacrifice that refused to be silenced. In the hidden passage, a passage veiled in darkness, the truth lay waiting to be uncovered. As the walls of lies crumbled, justice cast its long shadow over the guilty, bringing them to account for their sins. In the end, the house stood as a silent sentinel, a monument to the courage of a woman who dared to speak truth to power. The echoes of her voice lingered in the empty rooms, a reminder that justice, though delayed, could not be denied. And as the night fell, casting its cloak of shadows over the world, the house stood as a beacon of hope, a beacon that whispered of justice served, of a legacy reclaimed, of a soul at peace. Story 26. The tale unfolds in the fading light of a closing costume shop where old treasures find new homes. Among the remnants, a woman's hand reaches for a mask, its delicate features holding a mysterious allure. Placing it upon the dusty counter, she is met with a cashier's hesitant gaze. "That's not ours," he mumbles, a shiver in his voice. Perplexed, she inspects the mask, finding no tag to reveal its origin. With a casual shrug, she carries it away, unaware of the silent secrets it harbors. As the night drapes its velvet cloak over the world, a soft murmur stirs the air, like fabric whispering in the darkness. Startled awake, the woman, known as Catherine Reed, finds the mask no longer resting on her dresser, but perched upon her nightstand, its enigmatic gaze fixed upon her own. It is a neighbor who discovers the chilling scene the next morning, drawn by the beckoning light spilling from Catherine's open door. In the silent chamber, bathed in morning's gentle glow, Catherine lies still upon the floor, the mask vanished without a trace. Detective Morgan arrives, her steps measured as she navigates the eerie tableau. Shutters click in a rhythmic dance, a haunting backdrop to the hushed whispers of the gathered officers. Amidst the ordinary details of the room, a partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass, the detective senses a lingering unease. The medical examiner's solemn examination reveals no clear cause of death, only the stark terror etched upon Catherine's frozen features. Something scared her to her core, the detective breathes, a shiver coursing through her. Catherine, an art appraiser known for her keen eye and unwavering dedication to authenticity, now lies in eternal repose. Colleagues speak of her sharp discernment, her ability to unveil the truth hidden within art's depths. Could this very talent have led to her untimely demise? A visit to the now empty costume shop unearths cryptic revelations. The owner shares tales of mysterious origins, of items born from a collector's tragic end. Forensics' discovery of peculiar fibers clutched in Catherine's hand hints at a desperate grasp for the truth, a truth veiled in ancient mysteries. A retired detective, haunted by past cases mirroring Catherine's fate, imparts a chilling revelation. Ancient symbols concealed within the masks, a ritual of soul transference whispers of a darkness that knows no boundaries of time or reason. In Catherine's hidden journal, a final testament to her descent into fear's grip, a testament to the mask's insidious presence. Her words paint a portrait of a malevolent force, a relentless entity seeking vessels to ensnare in its macabre dance of death. As the investigation unravels the tangled web of past tragedies, a sinister pattern emerges. Each victim, each mask, a piece in a puzzle of horror spanning generations. The cause of death revealed as extreme fear, a terror so profound it silences even the beating heart. Surveillance footage unveils a ghastly truth, a figure cloaked in darkness, donning the mask's visage, a mimicry of life that chills the soul. The hunt for the mask leads to a vintage shop across the country, where it slips once more through the fingers of justice. And so the mask remains at large, a specter lurking in the shadows, waiting to ensnare its next unwitting victim. The detective, keeper of Catherine's journal, knows the truth that eludes official records a truth too dark to face in the light of day. In the stillness of night, she awakens to a sense of unseen eyes, a whisper of movement in the dark. She secures her sanctuary, a silent vigil against the encroaching darkness, a silent prayer that the mask may never find its way to her or to another soul bound in its chilling embrace. The cycle continues, a dance of death and despair as the mask bides its time, hungry for the essence that lingers behind mortal eyes. Story 27. Once upon a time, a mere flicker caught the mother's eye on the baby monitor screen. At first, she brushed it off as a technical glitch, a hiccup in the digital realm. But then the audio crackled and a voice, soft yet chilling, whispered, "SHH, go back to sleep." A shiver ran down her spine, freezing her in place. With a racing heart, she dashed to her son's room, only to find the crib empty, the room undisturbed. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. The only anomaly was a stuffed rabbit on the floor, its glassy eyes fixed on her, as if knowing more than it should. Rebecca's screams pierced the night, tearing through the silence until her voice grew hoarse. The neighbors, startled by her cries, dialed emergency services. When the authorities arrived, they found her cradling the stuffed rabbit, her world shattered. Her 4-month-old son, Samuel, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void in her heart. The investigation unfolded with more questions than answers. No signs of forced entry, no disturbances in the house, just a haunting whisper on the baby monitor. Suspicion fell upon Rebecca, her strained marriage, and her battle with postpartum depression. The community's murmurs painted her as the culprit, the mother who lost her child. But then a clue emerged from the shadows. Microscopic fibers foreign to the household were discovered on the nursery windowsill, a hint of an intruder's entry from outside. Security footage captured a mysterious figure lurking in the darkness, leaving behind a trail of uncertainty. As the focus shifted, Daniel, the absent husband, returned with a storm of emotions. His hands bore the marks of a newfound hobby rock climbing, raising eyebrows among the investigators. Financial records hinted at a darker motive, a substantial insurance policy on Samuel's life. Hidden secrets unraveled as a second family came to light, unraveling the web of deceit. The baby monitor, once a source of comfort, turned into a beacon of truth. Hacked, manipulated, it led the investigators to an unexpected revelation, a basement hideaway where Samuel was found, tended to by a woman named Elaine. Her vacant eyes spoke volumes as she was apprehended, revealing a twisted connection to Daniel's past. The trial unveiled a tale of betrayal and greed. The enhanced audio from the baby monitor echoed through the courtroom, unraveling the deception. Daniel's cough, a telltale sign, placed him at the scene of the crime he denied. The jury's swift verdict sealed their fate, Daniel and Elaine, condemned for their crimes against innocence. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. The case left a lasting impact, reshaping how abductions are investigated in the digital age. Baby monitors were scrutinized, safeguards reinforced, a reminder of the vulnerabilities we face in a connected world. Samuel grew up unaware of the night he vanished, shielded from the darkness that once loomed over their lives. And Rebecca, she kept the stuffed rabbit locked away, a silent witness to the truth hidden in the whispers of the night. The baby monitor may not have lied, but it revealed a reality more twisted than anyone could have imagined.